Chapter 9. Applied Faith. Faith is a royal visitor which enters only the mind that has been properly prepared for it, the mind that has been set in order through self-discipline. In the fashion of all royalty, faith commands the best room, nay, the finest suite, in the mental dwelling place. It will not be shunted into servants' quarters, and it will not associate with envy, greed, superstition, hatred, revenge, vanity, doubt, worry or fear. Get the full significance of this truth and you will be on the way to an understanding of that mysterious power which has baffled the scientists down through the ages. Then you will recognize the necessity for conditioning your mind through self-discipline, before expecting faith to become your permanent guest. Recalling the words of the sage of Concord, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "In every man there is something wherein I may learn of him, and in that I am his pupil," I shall now introduce a man who has been a great benefactor of mankind, so that you may observe how one goes about the conditioning of his mind for the expression of faith. Let him tell his own story. During the business depression which began in 1929, I took a postgraduate course in the University of Hard Knocks, the greatest of all schools. It was then I discovered a hidden fortune which I possessed, but had not been using. I made the discovery one morning when a notice came that my bank had closed its doors, possibly never to be reopened again, for it was then that I began to take inventory of my intangible, unused assets. Come with me while I describe what the inventory revealed. Let us begin with the most important item on the list, unused faith. When I searched deeply into my own heart, I discovered, despite my financial losses, I had an abundance of faith left in infinite intelligence and faith in my fellow men. With this discovery came another of still greater importance, the discovery that faith can accomplish that which not all the money of the world can achieve. When I possessed all the money I needed, I made the grievous error of believing money to be a permanent source of power. Now came the astonishing revelation that money, without faith, is nothing but so much inert matter, of itself possessed of no power whatsoever. Recognizing, perhaps for the first time in my life, the stupendous power of enduring faith, I analyzed myself carefully to determine just how much of this form of riches I possessed. The analysis was both surprising and gratifying. I began the analysis by taking a walk into the woods. I wished to get away from the crowd, away from the noise of the city, away from the disturbances of civilization and the fears of men, that I might meditate in silence. Ah, what gratification there is in that word silence! On my journey I picked up an acorn and held it in the palm of my hand. I found it near the roots of the giant oak tree from which it had fallen. I judged the age of the tree to have been so great that it must have been a fair-sized tree when George Washington was but a small boy. As I stood there looking at the great tree, and its small embryonic offspring which I held in my hand, I realized that the tree had grown from a small acorn. I also realized that all the men living could not have built such a tree. I was conscious of the fact that some form of intangible intelligence created the acorn from which the tree grew, and caused the acorn to germinate and begin its climb up from the soil of the earth. Then I realized that the greatest powers are the intangible powers, and not those which consist in bank balances or material things. I picked up a handful of black soil and covered the acorn with it. I held in my hand the visible portion of the substance out of which that magnificent tree had grown. At the root of the giant oak I plucked a fern. Its leaves were beautifully designed, and I realized as I examined the fern that it, too, was created by the same intelligence which had produced the oak tree. I continued my walk in the woods until I came to a running brook of clear, sparkling water. By this time I was tired, so I sat near the brook to rest and listened to its rhythmic music, as it danced on its way back to the sea. The experience brought back memories of my youth. I remembered playing by a similar brook. As I sat there listening to the music of the water, I became conscious of an unseen being, an intelligence which spoke to me from within and told me the enchanting story of the water, and this is the story it told. Water. Pure sparkling water. The same has been rendering service ever since this planet cooled off and became the home of man, beast and vegetation. Water. Ah, what a story you could tell if you spoke man's language. You have quenched the thirst of endless millions of earthly wayfarers, fed the flowers, expanded into steam and turned the wheels of man-made machinery, condensing and going back again to your original form. You have cleaned the sewers, washed the pavements, rendered countless services to man and beast, returning always to your source in the seas, there to become purified and start your journey of service once again. When you move you travel in one direction only, toward the seas from whence you came. You are forever going and coming, but you always seem to be happy at your labor. Water. Clean, pure, sparkling substance. No matter how much dirty work you perform, you cleanse yourself at the end of your labor. You cannot be created, nor can you be destroyed. You are akin to all life. Without your beneficence no form of life on this earth would exist. And the water of the brook went rippling, laughing, on its way back to the sea. The story of water ended, but I had heard a great sermon. I had been close to the greatest of all forms of intelligence. I felt evidence of that same intelligence which had created the great oak tree from a tiny acorn, the intelligence which had fashioned the leaves of the fern with mechanical and aesthetic skill such as no man could duplicate. The shadows of the trees were becoming longer, the day was coming to a close. As the sun slowly descended beyond the western horizon I realized that it, too, had played a part in that marvelous sermon which I had heard. Without the beneficent aid of the sun there could have been no conversion of the acorn into an oak tree. Without the sun's help the sparkling water of the flowing brook would have remained eternally imprisoned in the oceans, and life on this earth could never have existed. These thoughts gave a beautiful climax to the sermon I had heard. Thoughts of the romantic affinity existing between the sun and the water and all life on this earth, beside which all other forms of romance seemed incomparable and unimportant. I picked up a small white pebble which had been neatly polished by the waters of the running brook. As I held it in my hand I received, from within, a still more impressive sermon. The intelligence which conveyed that sermon to my mind seemed to say, "Behold, mortal, a miracle which you hold in your hand. I am only a tiny pebble of stone, yet I am, in reality, a small universe, in which there is everything that may be found in the more expanded portion of the universe which you see out there among the stars. I appear to be dead and motionless, but the appearance is deceiving. I am made of molecules. Inside my molecules are myriads of atoms, each a small universe unto itself. Inside the atoms are countless numbers of electrons which move at an inconceivable rate of speed. I am not a dead mass of stone, but an organized group of units of ceaseless energy. I appear to be a solid mass, but the appearance is an illusion, for my electrons are separated one from another by a distance greater than their mass. Study me carefully, O humble earthly wayfarer, and remember that the great powers of the universe are the intangibles, that the values of life are those which cannot be added by bank balances. The thought conveyed by that climax was so illuminating that it held me spellbound, for I recognized that I held in my hand an infinitesimal portion of the energy which keeps the sun, the stars, and the earth, on which we live, for a brief period, in their respective places in relation to one another. Meditation revealed to me the beautiful reality that there is law and order, even in the small confines of a tiny pebble of stone. I recognized that within the mass of that tiny pebble the romance and the reality of nature were combined. I recognized that within that small pebble fact transcended fancy. Never before had I felt so keenly the significance of the evidence of natural law and order and purpose which reveal themselves in everything the human mind can perceive. Never before had I felt myself so near the source of my faith in infinite intelligence. It was a beautiful experience, out there in the midst of Mother Nature's family of trees and running brooks, where the very calmness of the surroundings bade my weary soul be quiet and rest a while, so that I might look, feel, and listen while infinite intelligence unfolded to me the story of its reality. Never, in all my life, had I previously been so overwhelmingly conscious of the real evidence of infinite intelligence, or of the source of my faith. I lingered in this newly found paradise until the evening star began to twinkle, then reluctantly I retraced my footsteps back to the city, there to mingle once again with those who are driven, like galley slaves, by the Inexorable rules of civilization, in a mad scramble to gather up material things they do not need. I am now back in my study, with my books and my typewriter, on which I am recording the story of my experience. But I am swept by a feeling of loneliness and a longing to be out there by the side of that friendly brook, where, only a few hours ago, I had bathed my soul in the satisfying realities of infinite intelligence. I know that my faith in infinite intelligence is real and enduring. It is not a blind faith, it is one based on close examination of the handiwork of infinite intelligence, and as such has been expressed in the orderliness of the universe. I had been looking in the wrong direction for the source of my faith. I had been seeking it in the deeds of men, in human relationships, in bank balances and material things. I found it in a tiny acorn, a giant oak tree, a small pebble or stone, the leaves of a simple fern and the soil of the earth, in the friendly sun which warms the earth and gives motion to the waters, in the evening star, in the silence and calm of the great outdoors. And I am moved to suggest that infinite intelligence reveals itself through silence more readily than through the boisterousness of men's struggles, in their mad rush to accumulate material things. My bank account vanished, my bank collapsed, but I was richer than most millionaires, because I had discovered a direct approach to faith. With this power behind me I can accumulate other bank balances sufficient for my needs. Nay, I am richer than our most millionaires, because I depend upon a source of inspired power which reveals itself to me from within, while many of the more wealthy find it necessary to turn to bank balances and the stock ticker for stimulation and power. My source of power is as free as the air I breathe, and as limitless. To avail myself of it I have only to turn on my faith, and this I have in abundance. Thus, once again I learned the truth that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. My adversity cost me my bank balance. It paid off through the revelation of the means to all riches. Stated in his own words, you have the story of a man who has discovered how to condition his mind for the expression of faith. And what a dramatic story it is. Dramatic because of its simplicity. Here is a man who found a sound basis for an enduring faith, not in bank balances or material riches, but in the seed of an oak tree, the leaves of a fern, a small pebble, and a running brook, things which everyone may observe and appreciate. But his observation of these simple things led him to recognize that the greatest powers are intangible powers which are revealed through the simple things around us. I have related this man's story as I wished to emphasize the manner in which one may clear his mind, even in the midst of chaos and insurmountable difficulties, and prepare it for the expression of faith. The most important fact which this story reveals is this. When the mind has been cleared of a negative mental attitude, the power of faith moves in and begins to take possession. Surely no student of this philosophy will be unfortunate enough to miss this important observation. Let us turn now to an analysis of faith, although we must approach the subject with full recognition that faith is a power which has defied analysis by the entire scientific world. Faith has been given fourth place in this philosophy because it comes near to representing the fourth dimension, although it is presented here for its relationship to personal achievement. Faith is a state of mind which might properly be called the mainspring of the soul through which one's aims, desires and purposes may be translated into their physical or financial equivalent. Previously we observed that great power may be attained by the application of 1. The habit of going the extra mile, 2. Definiteness of purpose, and 3. The master mind. But that power is feeble in comparison with that which is available through the combined application of these principles with the state of mind known as faith. We have already observed that capacity for faith is one of the 12 riches. Let us now recognize the means by which this capacity may be filled with that strange power which has been the main bulwark of civilization, the chief cause of all human progress, the guiding spirit of all constructive human endeavor. Let us remember, at the outset of this analysis, that faith is a state of mind which may be enjoyed only by those who have learned the art of taking full and complete control of their minds. This is the one and only prerogative right over which an individual has been given complete control. Faith expresses its powers only through the mind that has been prepared for it. But the way of preparation is known and may be attained by all who desire to find it. The fundamentals of faith are these. A. Definiteness of purpose supported by personal initiative or action. B. The habit of going the extra mile in all human relationships. C. A mastermind alliance with one or more people who radiate courage based on faith, and who are suited spiritually and mentally to one's needs in carrying out a given purpose. D. A positive mind, free from all negatives, such as fear, envy, greed, hatred, jealousy, and superstition. A positive mental attitude is the first and the most important of the 12 riches. E. Recognition of the truth that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit, that temporary defeat is not failure until it has been accepted as such. F. The habit of affirming one's definite major purpose in life, in a ceremony of meditation, at least once daily. G. Recognition of the existence of infinite intelligence which gives orderliness to the universe, that all individuals are minute expressions of this intelligence, and as such the individual mind has no limitations except those which are accepted and set up by the individual in his own mind. H. A careful inventory, in retrospect, of one's past defeats and adversities, which will reveal the truth that all such experiences carry the seed of an equivalent benefit. I. Self-respect expressed through harmony with one's own conscience. J. Recognition of the oneness of all mankind. These are the fundamentals of major importance which prepare the mind for the expression of faith. Their application calls for no degree of superiority, but application does call for intelligence and a keen thirst for truth and justice. Faith fraternizes only with the mind that is positive. It is the elan vital that gives power, inspiration, and action to a positive mind. It is the power that causes a positive mind to act as an electromagnet, attracting to it the exact physical counterpart of the thought it expresses. Faith gives resourcefulness to the mind, enabling the mind to make grist of all that comes to its mill. It recognizes favorable opportunities, in every circumstance of one's life, whereby one may attain the object of faith, going so far as to provide the means by which failure and defeat may be converted into success of equivalent dimensions. Faith enables man to penetrate deeply into the secrets of nature and to understand nature's language as it is expressed in all natural laws. From this sort of revelation have come all the great inventions that serve mankind, and a better understanding of the way to human freedom through harmony in human relationships, such as was provided by the Constitution of the United States. Faith makes it possible to achieve that which man can conceive and believe. Thomas A. Edison believed he could perfect a practical incandescent electric lamp, and despite the fact that he failed more than 10,000 times that, faith carried him to the discovery of the secret for which he was searching. Signor Marconi believed the energy of the ether could be made to carry the vibrations of sound without the use of wires. His faith carried him through endless failures until at long last he was rewarded by triumph. Christopher Columbus believed the earth was round, that he would find land in an uncharted ocean if he sailed on. Despite the rebellious protests of his unbelieving sailors, he sailed on and on until he was rewarded for his faith. Helen Keller believed she would learn to speak, although she had lost the power of speech, her hearing, and her eyesight as well. Her faith restored her speech and provided her with the equivalent of hearing, through the sense of touch, thus proving that faith can and will find a way to the realization of human desires. If you would have faith, keep your mind on that which you desire. And remember that there is no such reality as a blanket faith, for faith is the outward demonstration of definiteness of purpose. Faith is guidance from within. The guiding force is infinite intelligence, directed to definite ends. It will not bring that which one desires, but it will guide one to the attainment of the object of desire. How to demonstrate the power of faith? A. Know what you want and determine what you have to give in return for it. B. When you affirm the objects of your desires, through prayer, inspire your imagination to see yourself already in possession of them, and act precisely as if you were in the physical possession thereof. Remember, the possession of anything first takes place mentally, in the mind. C. Keep the mind open at all times for guidance from within, and when You are inspired by hunches to modify your plans or to move on a new plan, move without hesitancy or doubt. D. When overtaken by temporary defeat, as you may be overtaken many times, remember that man's faith is tested in many ways, and your defeat may be only one of your testing periods. Therefore, accept defeat as an inspiration to greater effort and carry on with belief that you will succeed. E. Any negative state of mind will destroy the capacity for faith and result in a negative climax of any affirmation you may express. Your state of mind is everything, therefore take possession of your mind and clear it completely of all unwanted interlopers that are unfriendly to faith, and keep it cleared, no matter what may be the cost in effort. F. Learn to give expression to your power of faith by writing out a clear description of your definite major purpose in life and using it as the basis of your daily meditation. G. Associate with your definite major purpose as many as possible of the 9 basic motives described previously. H. Write out a list of all the benefits and advantages you expect to derive from the attainment of the object of your definite major purpose and call these into your mind many times daily, thereby making your mind success conscious. This is commonly called autosuggestion. I. Associate yourself, as far as possible, with people who are in sympathy with your definite major purpose, people who are in harmony with you, and inspire them to encourage you in every way possible. J. Let not a single day pass without making at least one definite move toward the attainment of your definite major purpose. Remember, faith without works is dead. K. Choose some prosperous person of self-reliance and courage as your pacemaker, and make up your mind not only to keep up with that person, but to excel him. Do this silently, without mentioning your plan to anyone. Boastfulness will be fatal to your success, as faith has nothing in common with vanity or self-love. 1. Surround yourself with books, pictures, wall mottos, and other suggestive reminders of self-reliance founded upon faith as it has been demonstrated by other people, thus building around yourself an atmosphere of prosperity and achievement. This habit will be fruitful of stupendous results. M. Adopt a policy of never evading or running away from unpleasant circumstances, but recognize such circumstances and build a counter-fire against them right where they overtake you. You will discover that recognition of such circumstances, without fear of their consequence, is 9/10 of the battle in mastering them. N. Recognize the truth that everything worth having has a definite price. The price of faith, among other things, is eternal vigilance in carrying out these simple instructions. Your watchword must be persistence. These are the steps that lead to the development and the maintenance of a positive mental attitude, the only one in which faith will abide. They are steps that lead to riches of both mind and spirit as well as riches of the purse. Fill your mind with this kind of mental food. These are the steps by which the mind may be prepared for the highest expressions of the soul. Feed your mind on such mental food and it will be easy for you to adopt the habit of going the extra mile. It will be easy for you to keep your mind attuned to that which you desire, with assurance that it shall become yours. The key to every man, said Emerson, is his thought. That is true. Every man today is the result of his thoughts of yesterday. It would be difficult for one to imagine Henry Ford fearing anything, for his life work and his achievements are the handiwork of faith. And it would be difficult to imagine Henry Ford accepting as impossible any end he might desire to attain. He gave the whole world notice of his faith some years ago, when he desired to have the Ford automobile engine blocks cast in one piece. He instructed his engineers to draw up a model for the casting. Impossible, they cried. You use that word carelessly, exclaimed Ford. Go ahead and try. They went ahead, but proceeded without Ford's faith. In a little while they reported back to Mr. Ford that they had tried without success. Try again, Mr. Ford requested, and keep on trying until you succeed. They tried again, and again, until eventually they found the method they were seeking. Ford's faith had won again. Thomas A. Edison desired to create a machine that would record and reproduce the sound of the human voice. No one had ever seen such a machine, and no one but Edison believed it could be produced. His belief was more than a desire, for he backed it with faith, and faith put in action. becomes wisdom. He went to work on the machine, and lo! His first model justified his faith, for it worked. James J. Hill sat with his hand on a telegraph key, waiting for an open line. But he was not idle. His imagination was at work, building a great transcontinental railway system through which he hoped to tap the vast resources of the undeveloped western portion of the United States. He had no money. He had no influential friends. He had no record of great achievement to give him prestige. But he did have faith, that irresistible power that recognizes no such reality as impossible. He reduced his definite major purpose to writing, omitting no detail. On a map of the United States he sketched the course of his proposed railroad. He slept with that map under his pillow. He carried it with him wherever he went. He fed his mind on his desire for the fulfillment of his dream, until he made that dream a reality. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire had laid waste the business portion of the city, Marshall Field came down to the site where, the day before, his retail store stood. All around him were groups of other merchants whose stores had also been destroyed. He listened in on their conversations and learned that they had given up hope, and many of them had already decided to move on further west and start over again. Calling the nearest groups to him, Mr. Field said, "Gentlemen, you may do as you please, but as for me, I intend to stay right here. Over there where you see the smoking remains of what was once my store, I shall build the world's greatest retail store." The store that Mr. Field built on faith still stands on that spot, in Chicago. It is recognized the world over as the greatest retail store on earth. These men and others like them have been the pioneers who produced our great American way of life. They gave us the American system of free enterprise that inspires every worker of industry to express his personal initiative backed by faith. They gave us our system of railroads and our system of communications. They gave us the talking pictures, the talking machines, the airplanes, the skyscrapers skeletoned with steel, the automobile, the improved highways, the household electrical appliances, the electric power installations, the X-ray, the banking and investment institutions, the great life insurance companies, the strongest navy in the world, yes, and more important than all these, they prepared the way, through their faith, for the freedom each and every one of us enjoys as an American citizen. Human progress is no matter of accident or luck, but it is the result of applied faith, expressed by men who have conditioned their minds, through the 17 principles of this philosophy, for the expression of faith. Verily, the United States is a nation founded on faith and maintained by faith. Moreover, it provides all the essentials that inspire faith, so that the humblest citizen may attain the highest ambitions of his heart and soul. Therefore, our nation is justly known as a land of opportunity, the richest and the freest nation of the world. And all freedom and riches have their roots in an abiding faith. The space that every man occupies in the world is measured by the faith he expresses in connection with his aims and purposes. Let us remember this, we who aspire to enjoy freedom and riches. Let us remember, too, that faith fixes no limitations of freedom or riches, but it guides every man to the realization of his desires, whether they be great or small, according to his expression of it. And though faith is the one power which defies the scientists to analyze it, the procedure by which it may be applied is simple and within the understanding of the humblest, thus it is the common property of all mankind. All that is known of this procedure has been simply stated in this chapter, and not a single step of it is beyond the reach of the humblest person. Faith begins with definiteness of purpose functioning in a mind that has been prepared for it by the development of a positive mental attitude. It attains its greatest scope of power by physical action directed toward the attainment of a definite purpose. All voluntary physical action is inspired by one or more of the 9 basic motives. It is not difficult for one to develop faith in connection with the pursuit of one's desires. Let a man be motivated by love and see how quickly this emotion is given wings for action through faith. An action in pursuit of the objective of that love quickly follows. The action becomes a labor of love, which is one of the 12 riches. Let a man set his heart upon the accumulation of material riches and see how quickly his every effort becomes a labor of love. The hours of the day are not long enough for his needs, and though he labors long he finds that fatigue is softened by the joy of self-expression, which is another of the 12 riches. Thus, one by one the resistances of life fade into nothingness for the man who has prepared his mind for self-expression through faith. Success becomes inevitable. Joy crowns his every effort. He has no time or inclination for hatred. Harmony in human relationships comes naturally to him. His hope of achievement is high and continuous, for he sees himself already in possession of the object of his definite purpose. Intolerance has been supplanted by an open mind, and self-discipline becomes as natural as the eating of food. He understands people because he loves them, and because of this love he is willing to share his blessings. Of fear he knows nothing, for all his fears have been driven away by his faith. The 12 riches have become his own. Faith is an expression of gratitude for man's relationship to his Creator. Fear is an acknowledgement of the influences of evil, and it connotes a lack of belief in the Creator. The greatest of life's riches consist in the understanding of the 4 principles which I have mentioned. These principles are known as the Big 4 of this philosophy, because they are the warp and the woof and the major foundation stones of the master key to the power of thought and the inner secrets of the soul. Use this master key wisely and you shall be free. Some to whom the master key has been revealed. In a one-room log cabin, in Kentucky, a small boy was lying on the hearth, learning to write, using the back of a wooden shovel as a slate, and a piece of charcoal as a pencil. A kindly woman stood over him, encouraging him to keep on trying. The woman was his mother. The boy grew into manhood without having shown any promise of greatness. He took up the study of law and tried to make a living at that profession. But his success was meager. He tried storekeeping, but the sheriff soon caught up with him. He entered the army, but he made no noteworthy record there. Everything to which he turned his hand seemed to wither and disappear into nothingness. Then a great love came into his life. It ended with the death of the one and only woman he ever loved, but the sorrow over that death reached deeply into the man's soul, and there it made contact with the secret power that comes from within. He seized that power and began to put it to work. It made him President of the United States. It wiped out the curse of slavery in America. And it saved the Union from dissolution in the time of a great national emergency. The great emancipator is now a citizen of the universe, but the spirit of his great soul, a spirit that was set free by the secret power from within his own mind, goes marching on. That spirit has helped to make the United States the freest country of the world. So, this power that comes to men from within knows no social caste. It is as available to the poor and the humble as it is to the rich and the powerful. It need not be passed on from one person to another. It is possessed by all who think. It cannot be put into effect for you by anyone except yourself. It must be acquired from within, and it is free to all who will appropriate it. What strange fear is it that gets into the minds of men and short circuits their approach to this secret power from within, and when it is recognized and used lifts men to great heights of achievement? How and why do the vast majority of the people of the world become the victims of a hypnotic rhythm which destroys their capacity to use the secret power of their own minds? How can this rhythm be broken? The approach to the source of all genius has been charted. It is the self-same path that was followed by Thomas A. Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, and the other great leaders who have contributed, from their rich experiences, to the establishment of the American way of life. How may one tap that secret power that comes from within, some will wish to ask. Let us see how others have drawn upon it. A young clergyman by the name of Frank Gunsaulus had long desired to build a new type of college. He knew exactly what he wanted, but the hitch came in the fact that it required $1 million in cash. He made up his mind to get the $1 million. Definiteness of decision, based upon definiteness of purpose, constituted the first step of his plan. Then he wrote a sermon entitled "What I Would Do with $1 Million," and announced in the newspapers that he would preach on that subject the following Sunday morning. At the end of the sermon, a strange man whom the young preacher had never seen before, arose, walked down to the pulpit, extended his hand and said, I like your sermon, and you may come down to my office tomorrow morning and I will give you the $1 million you desire. The man was Philip D. Armour, the packing house founder of Armour and Company. His gift was the beginning of the Armour School of Technology, one of the great schools of the country. This is the sum and the substance of what happened. What went on in the mind of the young preacher, that enabled him to contact the secret power that is available through the mind of man, is something with which we can only conjecture, but the modus operandi by which that power was stimulated was applied faith. Shortly after birth Helen Keller was stricken by a physical affliction, which deprived her of sight, hearing, and speech. With two of the more important of the 5 physical senses stilled forever, she faced life under difficulties such as most people never know throughout their lives. With the aid of a kindly woman who recognized the existence of that secret power which comes from within, Helen Keller began to contact that power and use it. In her own words, she gives a definite clue as to one of the conditions under which the power may be revealed. Faith, said Miss Keller, rightly understood, is active, not passive. Passive faith is no more a force than sight is in an eye that does not look or search out. Active faith knows no fear. It denies that God has betrayed his creatures and given the world over to darkness. It denies despair. Reinforced with faith, the weakest mortal is mightier than disaster. Faith, backed by action, was the instrument with which Miss Keller bridged her affliction so that she was restored to a useful life. Through applied faith she learned to speak. Through her faith she substituted the sense of touch to do the work of the sense of hearing and the sense of sight, thus proving that no matter how great may be one's physical handicaps, there always is a means by which they may be eliminated or bridged. The way may be found through that secret power from within one's mind, the approach to which must be discovered by the individual himself. Go back through the pages of history and you will observe that the story of civilization's unfoldment leads inevitably to the works of men and women who opened the door to that secret power from within, with applied faith as the master key. Observe, too, that great achievements always are born of hardship and struggle and barriers which seem insurmountable. Obstacles which yield to nothing but an indomitable will backed by an abiding faith. And here, in one short phrase, indomitable will backed by an abiding faith, you have the approach of major importance that leads to the discovery of the door of the mind, behind which the secret power from within is hidden. Men who penetrate that secret power and apply it in the solution of personal problems sometimes are called dreamers. But, observe that they back their dreams with action, thus proving the soundness of Helen Keller's statement that faith, rightly understood, is active, not passive. One of the strange features of faith, rightly understood, is that it generally appears because of some emergency which forces men to look beyond the power of ordinary thought for the solution of their problems. It is during these emergencies that we draw upon that secret power from within which knows no resistance strong enough to defeat it. Such emergencies, for example, as that faced by the 56 men who gave birth to this nation when they signed their names to the most profound document of all times, the Declaration of Independence. That was active faith, rightly understood, for each man who signed that document knew that it might become his own death warrant. Fortunately, it became a license to liberty for all mankind claiming its protection, and it may well prove yet to be a license to liberty for the entire world. The benefits of the document were proportionate to the risk assumed by those who signed it. The signers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their rights to liberty, the greatest privileges of a civilized people, and they made the pledge without mental reservations. Here, then, is the suggestion of a test by which men may measure their capacity for active faith. To be effective, it must be based on a willingness to risk whatever the circumstances demand, liberty, material fortune, and life itself. Faith without risk is a passive faith which, as Helen Keller stated, is no more a force than sight is in an eye that does not look or search out. And let us examine the records of some of the great leaders who came after the signers of the Declaration of Independence, for theirs was also an active faith. The men who gave us the American way of life and the American standard of living, the highest the world has ever known. They, too, discovered that secret power that comes from within, drew upon it, applied it, and converted a vast wilderness into the cradle of democracy, which is now the envy of the rest of the world. Such men as James J. Hill, who pushed back the frontiers of the West and brought the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans into easy access of the people through a great transcontinental railroad system. And Andrew Carnegie, who perfected the manufacture and distribution of steel products until that metal served to advance American industry in a thousand ways which had been prohibited, because of high costs. And Henry Ford, who supplanted the horse and buggy mode of travel with a more rapid means of transportation that is within the means of the humblest person. As a result, this country was covered with a network of improved highways that added immeasurable wealth to the sections through which they pass. And Lee De Forest, who perfected the mechanical means by which the boundless force of the ether has been harnessed and made to serve as a means of instantaneous communication between the peoples of the world through the radio. And Thomas A. Edison, who pushed civilization ahead by thousands of years, with the perfection of the incandescent electric lamp, the talking machine, the moving picture, and scores of other useful inventions which lighten the burdens of mankind and add to his pleasure and education. These, and others of their type, were men of active faith. We sometimes call them geniuses, but they disclaimed the right to the honor because they recognized that their achievements came as the result of that secret power from within which is available to everyone who will embrace it and use it. We all know of the achievements of these great leaders, we know the rules of their leadership, we recognize the nature and the scope of the blessings their labors have conferred upon the people of this nation, and thanks to the vision of Andrew Carnegie, we have preserved for the people the philosophy of individual achievement through which these men helped to make this the world's richest and freest country. But, unfortunately, not all of us recognize the handicaps under which they worked, the obstacles they had to overcome, and the spirit of active faith in which they carried on their work. Of this we may be sure, however, their achievements were in exact proportion to the emergencies they had to overcome. They met with opposition from those who were destined to benefit most by their struggles, people who, because of the lack of active faith, always view with skepticism and doubt that which is new and unfamiliar. The emergencies of life often bring men to the crossroads, where they are forced to choose their direction, one road being marked faith and another fear. What is it that causes the vast majority to take the fear road? The choice hinges upon one's mental attitude. The man who takes the faith road is the man who has conditioned his mind to believe, conditioned it little at a time, by prompt and courageous decisions in the details of his daily experiences. The man who takes the fear road does so because he has neglected to condition his mind to be positive. In Washington, a man sits in a wheelchair with a tin cup and a bunch of pencils in his hands, gaining a meager living by begging. The excuse for his begging is that he lost the use of his legs through infantile paralysis. His brain has not been affected. He is otherwise strong and healthy. But his choice led him to accept the fear road when the dreaded disease overtook him, and his mind atrophies through disuse. In another part of the same city was another man who was afflicted with the same handicap. He, too, had lost the use of his legs, but his reaction to his loss was far different. When he came to the crossroads at which he was forced to make a choice, he took the faith road, and it led straight to the White House and the highest position within the gift of the American people. That which he lost through incapacity of his limbs, he gained in the use of his brain and his will, and it is a matter of record that his physical affliction did in no way hinder him from being one of the most active men who ever occupied the position of president. The difference in the stations of these two men was very great. But, let no one be deceived as to the cause of this difference, for it is entirely a difference of mental attitudes. One man chose fear as his guide. The other chose faith. And, when you come right down to the circumstances which lift some men to high stations in life and condemn others to penury and want, the likelihood is that their widely separated positions reflect their respective mental attitudes. The high man chooses the high road of faith, the low man chooses the low road of fear, and education, experience, and personal skill are matters of secondary importance. When Thomas A. Edison's teacher sent him home from school, at the end Of the first 3 months, with a note to his parents saying he had an addled mind and could not be taught, he had the best of excuses for becoming an outcast, a do-nothing, a nobody, and that is precisely what he proceeded to become for a time. He did odd jobs, sold newspapers, tinkered with gadgets and chemicals until he became what is commonly known as a jack of all trades, and not very good at any. Then something took place in the mind of Thomas A. Edison that was destined to make his name immortal. Through some strange process which he never fully disclosed to the world, he discovered that secret power from within, took possession of it, organized it, and lo! Instead of being a man with an addled brain, he became the outstanding genius of invention of all time. And now, wherever we see an electric light, or hear a phonograph, or see a moving picture, we should be reminded that we are observing the product of that secret power from within which is as available to us as it was to the great Edison. Moreover, we should feel sorely ashamed if, by neglect or indifference, we are making no appropriate use of this great power. One of the strange features of this secret power from within is that it aids men in procuring whatever they set their hearts upon, which is but another way of saying it translates into reality one's dominating thoughts. In the little town of Tyler, Texas, more than a quarter of a century ago, a boy still in his teens walked into a grocery store where some loafers were sitting by a stove. One of the men looked at the youth, grinned broadly and said, "Say, sonny, what are you going to be when you are a man?" "I'll tell you what I'm going to be," the boy shouted. "I'm going to be the best lawyer in the world. That's what I'm going to be if you wish to." "No," the loafers yelled with laughter. The boy picked up his groceries and quietly walked out of the store. Later, when the loafers laughed, it was in a different vein, for that boy had become a recognized authority in the legal world, and his skill at law was so great that he was earning more than the President of the United States. His name is Martin W. Littleton. He, too, discovered the secret power within his own mind, and that power enabled him to set his own price on his services and get it. As far as knowledge of the law is concerned, there are thousands of lawyers who perhaps are as skilled at law as Martin W. Littleton, but few of them are making more than a living from their profession because they have not discovered there is something that brings success in the legal profession, which is not taught in law schools. The illustration might be extended to cover every profession and all human endeavor. In every calling there are a few who rise to the top, while all around them are others who never get beyond mediocrity. Those who succeed usually are called lucky. To be sure, they are lucky. But, learn the facts and you will discover that their luck consists of that secret power from within, which they have applied through a positive mental attitude, a determination to follow the road of faith instead of the road of fear and self-limitation. The power that comes from within recognizes no such reality as permanent barriers. It converts defeat into a challenge to greater effort. It removes self-imposed limitations such as fear and doubt. And, above all else, let us remember that it makes no black marks against any man's record which he cannot erase. If approached through the power from within, every day brings forth a newly born opportunity for individual achievement which need not in any way whatsoever be burdened by the failures of yesterday. It favors no race or creed, and it is bound by no sort of arbitrary consistency compelling man to remain in poverty because he was born in poverty. The power from within is the one medium through which the effects of cosmic habit force may be changed from a negative to a positive application, instantaneously. It recognizes no precedent, follows no hard and fast rules, and makes royal kings of the humblest of men at will their will. It offers the one and only grand highway to personal freedom and liberty. It restores health where all else fails, in open defiance of all the rules of modern medical science. It heals the wounds of sorrow and disappointment regardless of their cause. It transcends all human experience, all education, all knowledge available to mankind. And its only fixed price is that of an unyielding faith, an active applied faith. It was the inspiration of the poet who wrote, "Isn't it strange that princes and kings, and clowns that caper in sawdust rings, and common folks, like you and me, all are builders for eternity. To each is given a book of rules, a block of stone and a bag of tools, and each must shape ere time has flown, a stumbling block or a stepping stone. Search until you find the point of approach to that secret power from within, and when you find it you will have discovered your true self, that other self which makes use of every experience of life. Then, whether you build a better mousetrap, or write a better book, or preach a better sermon, the world will make a beaten path to your door. Recognize you and adequately reward you, no matter who you are or what may have been the nature and scope of your failures of the past. What if you have failed in the past? So did Edison, Henry Ford, the Wright brothers, Andrew Carnegie, and all the other great American leaders who have helped to establish the American way of life. They all met with failure in one way or another, but they didn't call it by that name, they called it temporary defeat. With the aid of the light that shines from within, these and all truly great men have recognized temporary defeat for exactly what it is, a challenge to greater effort backed by greater faith. Anyone can quit when the going is hard. Anyone can feel sorry for himself when temporary defeat overtakes him. But self-coddling was no part of the character of the men whom the world has recognized as great. The approach to that power from within cannot be made by self-pity. It cannot be made through fear and timidity. It cannot be made through envy and hatred. It cannot be made through avarice and greed. No, your other self pays no heed to any of these negatives. It manifests itself only through the mind that has been swept clean of all negative mental attitudes. It thrives in the mind that is guided by faith. It is not a new philosophy of achievement that the world needs, but it is a rededication of the old and tried principles which led unerringly to the discovery of that power from within which moves mountains. The power that has brought forth great leaders in every walk of life and in every generation is still available. Men of vision and faith, who have pushed back the frontiers of ignorance and superstition and fear, have given the world all that we know as civilization. The power is clothed in no mystery and it performs no miracles, but it works through the daily deeds of men, and reflects itself in every form of service rendered for the benefit of mankind. It is called by myriad names, but its nature never changes, no matter by what name it is known. It works through but one medium, and that is the mind. It expresses itself in thoughts, ideas, plans and purposes of men, and the great. Chapter 10. The Law of Cosmic Habit Force. Habit is a cable, we weave a thread of it every day, and at last we cannot break it. Horace Mann. So, we come now to the analysis of the greatest of all of nature's laws. The law of cosmic habit force. Briefly described, the law of cosmic habit force is nature's method of giving fixation to all habits so that they may carry on automatically once they have been set into motion. The habits of men the same as the habits of the universe. Every man is where he is and what he is because of his established habits of thoughts and deeds. The purpose of this entire philosophy is to aid the individual in the formation of the kind of habits that will transfer him from where he is to where he wishes to be in life. Every scientist, and many laymen, know that nature maintains a perfect balance between all the elements of matter and energy throughout the universe, that the entire universe is operated through an inexorable system of orderliness and habits which never vary, and cannot be altered by any form of human endeavor, that the 5 known realities of the universe are 1. Time, 2. Space, 3. Energy, 4. Matter, and 5. Intelligence, which shape the other known realities into orderliness and system based upon fixed habits. These are nature's building blocks with which she creates a grain of sand, or the largest stars that float through space, and every other thing known to man, or that the mind of man can conceive. These are the known realities, but not everyone has taken the time or the interest to ascertain the fact that cosmic habit force is the particular application of energy with which nature maintains the relationship between the atoms of matter, the stars, and the planets in their ceaseless motion onward toward some unknown destiny, the seasons of the year, night and day, sickness and health, life and death. Cosmic habit force is the medium through which all habits and all human relationships are maintained in varying degrees of permanence, and the medium through which thought is translated into its physical equivalent in response to the desires and purposes of individuals. But these are truths capable of proof, and one may count that our sacred during which he discovers the unescapable truth that man is only an instrument through which higher powers than his own are projecting themselves. This entire philosophy is designed to lead one to this important discovery, and to enable him to make use of the knowledge it reveals, by placing himself in harmony with the unseen forces of the universe which may carry him inevitably into the success side of the great river of life. The hour of this discovery should bring him within easy reach of the master key to all riches. Cosmic habit force is nature's controller through which all other natural laws are coordinated, organized and operated through orderliness and system. Therefore it is the greatest of all natural laws. We see the stars and the planets move with such precision that the astronomers can predetermine their exact location and their relationship to one another scores of years hence. We see the seasons of the year come and go with a clock-like regularity. We know that an oak tree grows from an acorn, and a pine tree grows from the seed of its ancestor, that an acorn never makes a mistake and produces a pine tree, nor does a pine seed produce an oak tree. We know that nothing is ever produced that does not have its antecedents in something similar which preceded it, that the nature and the purpose of one's thoughts produce fruits after their kind, just as surely as fire produces smoke. Cosmic habit force is the medium by which every living thing is forced to take on and become a part of the environmental influences in which it lives and moves. Thus it is clearly evident that success attracts more success, and failure attracts more failure, a truth that has long been known to men, although but few have understood the reason for this strange phenomenon. It is known that the person who has been a failure may become a most outstanding success by close association with those who think and act in terms of success, but not everyone knows that this is true because the law of cosmic habit force transmits the success consciousness from the mind of the successful man to the mind of the unsuccessful one who is closely related to him in the daily affairs of life. Whenever any two minds contact each other, there is born of that contact a third mind patterned after the stronger of the two. Most successful men recognize this truth and frankly admit that their success began with their close association with some person whose positive mental attitude they either consciously or unconsciously appropriated. Cosmic habit force is silent, unseen, and unperceived through any of the 5 physical senses. That is why it has not been more widely recognized. For most men do not attempt to understand the intangible forces of nature, nor do they interest themselves in abstract principles. However, these intangibles and abstractions represent the real powers of the universe, and they are the real basis of everything that is tangible and concrete, the source from which tangibility and concreteness are derived. Understand the working principle of cosmic habit force and you will have no difficulty in interpreting Emerson's essay on compensation, for he was rubbing elbows with the law of cosmic habit force when he wrote this famous essay. And Sir Isaac Newton likewise came near to the complete recognition of this law when he made his discovery of the law of gravitation. Had he gone but a brief distance beyond where his discovery ended, he might have helped to reveal the same law which holds our little Earth in space and relates it systematically to all other planets in both time and space, the same law that relates human beings to each other and relates every individual to himself through his thought habits. The term habit force is self-explanatory. It is a force which works through established habits, and every living thing below the intelligence of man lives, reproduces itself and fulfills its earthly mission in direct response to the power of cosmic habit force through what we call instinct. Man alone has been given the privilege of choice in connection with his living habits, and these he may fix by the patterns of his thoughts, the one and only privilege over which any individual has been given complete right of control. Man may think in terms of self-imposed limitations of fear and doubt and envy and greed and poverty, and cosmic habit force will translate these thoughts into their material equivalent. Or he may think in terms of opulence and plenty, and this same law will translate his thoughts into their physical counterpart. In this manner may one control his earthly destiny to an astounding degree simply by exercising his privilege of shaping his own thoughts. But once these thoughts have been shaped into definite patterns, they are taken over by the law of cosmic habit force and are made into permanent habits, and they remain as such unless and until they have been supplanted by different and stronger thought patterns. Now we come to the consideration of one of the most profound of all truths, the fact that most men who attain the higher brackets of success seldom do so until they have undergone some tragedy or emergency which reached deeply into their souls and reduced them to that circumstance of life which men call failure. The reason for this strange phenomenon is readily recognized by those who understand the law of cosmic habit force, for it consists in the fact that these disasters and tragedies of life serve to break up the established habits of man, habits which have led him eventually to the inevitable results of failure, and thus break the grip of cosmic habit force and allow him to formulate new and better habits. We see the same phenomenon in the results of warfare. When nations or large groups of people so relate themselves that their efforts do not harmonize with the divine plan of nature, they are forced to break up their habits by warfare or some other equally disturbing circumstances, such as business depressions or epidemics of disease, so that a new start may be made which conforms more nearly to nature's ultimate and overall scheme. This conclusion is not intended to provide a justification for warfare, but rather to serve as an indictment of mankind on the charge of ignorance of a law which, if it were universally understood and respected, would make warfare unnecessary and impossible. Wars grow out of maladjustments in the relationships of men. These maladjustments are the results of the negative thoughts of men which have grown until they assume mass proportions. The spirit of any nation is but the sum total of the dominating thought habits of its people. And the same is true of individuals, for here too the spirit of the individual is determined by his dominating thought habits. Most individuals are at war, in one way or another, throughout their lives. They are at war with their own conflicting thoughts and emotions. They are at war in their family relationships and in their occupational and social relationships. Recognize this truth and you will understand the real power and the benefits which are available to those who live by the golden rule, for this great rule will save you from the conflicts of personal warfare. Recognize it and you will understand also the real purpose and benefits of a definite major purpose, for once that purpose has been fixed in the consciousness, by one's thought habits, it will be taken over by cosmic habit force and carried out to its logical conclusion, by whatever practical means that may be available. Cosmic habit force does not suggest to an individual what he shall desire, or whether his thought habits shall be positive or negative, but it does act upon all his thought habits by crystallizing them into varying degrees of permanency and translating them into their physical equivalent, through inspired motivation to action. It not only fixes the thought habits of individuals, but it fixes also the thought habits of groups and masses of people, according to the pattern established by the preponderance of their individual dominating thoughts. For example, the whole world began, soon after the end of World War I, to speak of the next war, until that war was crystallized into action. In a similar manner, epidemics of disease are thought and talked into existence. When the Department of Health of a city begins posting large red-lettered signs, warning people to be on the lookout for the measles, or diphtheria, or some other disease, an epidemic of that particular disease is the very next manifestation of this expression of thought. It is almost sure to follow. Here too the same rule applies to the individual who thinks and talks of disease. At first he is regarded as a hypochondriac, one who suffers with imaginary illness, but when the habit is maintained, the disease thus manifested, or one very closely akin to it, generally makes its appearance. Cosmic habit force attends to this. For it is true that any thought held in the mind through repetition begins immediately to translate itself into its physical equivalent, by every practical means that may be available. It is a sad commentary on the intelligence of people to observe that more than 3/4 of the people who have the full benefits of a great country such as ours, should go all the way through life in poverty and want, but the reason for this is not difficult to understand if one recognizes the working principle of cosmic habit force. Poverty is the direct result of a poverty consciousness, which results from thinking in terms of poverty, fearing poverty, and talking of poverty. It would be difficult to imagine Henry Ford thinking in terms of that which he does not want, or in terms of poverty. He lives on the side of the street opposite the things he does not want, but he never crosses over, and That is why he is carried onward to success by the positive side of the great river of life. His education and general ability have nothing to do with his success, for he has less of each than have millions of men who remain poverty-stricken all their lives, some of them men with a string of college degrees after their names. The world has thought and spoken of cancer as an incurable disease for so long that cosmic habit force has transmuted this thought pattern into a major fixation which is difficult to break. But the time is at hand when groups of the better informed people are beginning to set up thought patterns which may serve as an antidote for this disease. When this kind of mass thinking becomes sufficiently extensive, cancer will go the way of all human ills which have been starved to death because people stopped talking and thinking of them. And let us all join in the hope that the time will come, and soon, when people will stop enjoying poor health, and will regard the admission of sickness as a disgrace rather than something to serve as the major topic of polite conversation wherever friends and acquaintances meet. Sound health is the result of a carefully cultivated health consciousness that has been created by constant thoughts of sound health and is made permanent by the law of cosmic habit force. If you desire sound health, give orders to your subconscious mind to create it, and cosmic habit force will carry out the order. If you desire opulence, give orders to your subconscious mind to produce opulence, thus developing a prosperity consciousness, and see how quickly your economic condition will improve. First comes the consciousness of that which you desire, then follows the physical or mental manifestation of your desires. The consciousness is your responsibility. It is something you must create by your daily thoughts, or by meditation if you prefer to make known your desires in that manner. In this manner one may ally himself with no less a power than that of the Creator of all things. I have come to the conclusion, said a great philosopher, that the acceptance of poverty, or the acceptance of ill health, is an open confession of the lack of faith. We do a lot of proclaiming of faith, but our actions belie our words. Faith is a state of mind that may become permanent only by actions. Belief alone is not sufficient, for as the great philosopher has said, faith without works is dead. The law of cosmic habit force is nature's own creation. It is the one universal principle through which order and system and harmony are carried out in the entire operation of the universe, from the largest star that hangs in the heavens to the smallest atoms of matter. It is a power that is equally available to the weak and the strong, the rich and the poor, the sick and the well. It provides the solution to all human problems. The major purpose of the 17 principles of this philosophy is that of aiding the individual to adapt himself to the power of cosmic habit force by self-discipline in connection with the formation of his habits of thought. Let us turn now to a brief review of these principles, so that we may understand their relationship to cosmic habit force. Let us observe how these principles are so related that they blend together and form the master key which unlocks the doors to the solution of all problems. The analysis begins with the first principle of the philosophy. A. The habit of going the extra mile. This principle is given first position because it aids in conditioning the mind for the rendering of useful service. And this conditioning prepares the way for the second principle. B. Definiteness of purpose. With the aid of this principle one may give organized direction to the principle of going the extra mile, and make sure that it leads in the direction of his major purpose and becomes cumulative in its effects. These two principles alone will take anyone very far up the ladder of achievement. But those who are aiming for the higher goals of life will need much help on the way, and this help is available through the application of the third principle. C. The master mind. Through the application of this principle one begins to experience a new and a greater sense of power which is not available to the individual mind, as it bridges one's personal deficiencies and provides him, when necessary, with any portion of the combined knowledge of mankind which has been accumulated down through the ages. But this sense of power will not be complete until one acquires the art of receiving guidance through the fourth principle. D. Applied faith. Here the individual begins to tune in on the powers of infinite intelligence, which is a benefit that is available only to the person who has conditioned his mind to receive it. Here the individual begins to take full possession of his own mind by mastering all fears, worries, and doubts, by recognizing his oneness with the source of all power. These four principles have been rightly called the Big Four because they are capable of providing more power than the average man needs to carry him to great heights of personal achievement. But they are adequate only for the very few who have other needed qualities of success, such as those which are provided by the fifth principle. Pleasing personality. A pleasing personality enables a man to sell himself and his ideas to other men. Hence it is an essential for all who desire to become the guiding influence in a mastermind alliance. But observe carefully how definitely the four preceding principles tend to give one a pleasing personality. These 5 principles are capable of providing one with stupendous personal power, but not enough power to ensure him against defeat, for defeat is a circumstance that every man meets many times throughout his lifetime. Hence the necessity of understanding and applying the 6th principle. Habit of learning from defeat. Notice that this principle begins with the word habit, which means that it must be accepted and applied as a matter of habit, under all the circumstances of defeat. In this principle may be found hope sufficient to inspire a man to make a fresh start when his plans go astray, as go astray they must at one time or another. Observe how greatly the source of personal power has increased through the application of these 6 principles. The individual has found out where he is going in life, he has acquired the friendly cooperation of all whose services are needed to help him reach his goal, he has made himself pleasing, thereby ensuring for himself the continued cooperation of others. He has acquired the art of drawing upon the source of infinite intelligence, and of expressing that power through applied faith, and he has learned to make stepping stones of the stumbling blocks of personal defeat. Despite all of these advantages, however, the man whose definite major purpose leads in the direction of the higher brackets of personal achievement will come many times to the point in his career when he will need the benefits of the 7th principle. Creative vision. This principle enables one to look into the future and to judge it by a comparison with the past, and to build new and better plans for attaining his hopes and aims through the workshop of his imagination. And here, for the first time perhaps, a man may discover his 6th sense and begin to draw upon it for the knowledge which is not available through the organized sources of human experience and accumulated knowledge. But, in order to make sure that he puts this benefit to practical use, he must embrace and apply the 8th principle. Personal initiative. This is the principle that starts action and keeps it moving toward definite ends. It ensures one against the destructive habits of procrastination, indifference and laziness. An approximation of the importance of this principle may be had by recognizing that it is the habit producer in connection with the 7 preceding principles, for it is obvious that the application of no principle may become a habit except by the application of personal initiative. The importance of this principle may be further evaluated by recognition of the fact that it is the sole means by which a man may exercise full and complete control over the only thing that the Creator has given him to control, the power of his own thoughts. Thoughts do not organize and direct themselves. They need guidance, inspiration and aid which can be given only by one's personal initiative. But personal initiative is sometimes misdirected. Therefore it needs the supplemental guidance that is available through the 9th principle. Accurate thinking. Accurate thinking not only ensures one against the misdirection of personal initiative, but it also ensures one against errors of judgment, guesswork, and premature decisions. It also protects one against the influence of his own undependable emotions by modifying them through the power of reason, commonly known as the head. Here the individual who has mastered these 9 principles will find himself in possession of tremendous power, but personal power may be, and often it is, a dangerous power if it is not controlled and directed through the application of the 10th principle. Self-discipline. Self-discipline cannot be had for the mere asking, nor can it be acquired quickly. It is the product of carefully established and carefully maintained habits which in many instances can be acquired only by many years of painstaking effort. So we have come to the point at which the power of the will must be brought into action, for self-discipline is solely a product of the will. Numberless men have risen to great power by the application of the preceding 9 principles, only to meet with disaster, or they carry others to defeat by their lack of self-discipline in the use of their power. This principle, when mastered and applied, gives one complete control over his greatest enemy, himself. Self-discipline must begin with the application of the 11th principle. K. Concentration of endeavor. The power of concentration is also a product of the will. It is so closely related to self-discipline that the two have been called the twin brothers of this philosophy. Concentration saves one from the dissipation of his energies, and aids him in keeping his mind focused upon the object of his definite major purpose until it has been taken over by the subconscious section of the mind and there made ready for translation into its physical equivalent, through the law of cosmic habit force. It is the camera's eye of the imagination through which the detailed outline of one's aims and purposes are recorded in the subconscious section of the mind, hence it is indispensable. Now look again, and see how greatly one's personal power has grown by the application of these 11 principles. But even these are not sufficient for every circumstance of life, for there are times when one must have the friendly cooperation of many people, such as customers in business, or clients in a profession, or votes in an election to public office, all of which may be had through the application of the 12th principle. 1. Cooperation. Cooperation differs from the mastermind principle in that it is a human relationship that is needed, and may be had, without a definite alliance with others, based upon a complete fusion of the minds for the attainment of a definite purpose. Without the cooperation of others one cannot attain success in the higher brackets of personal achievement, for cooperation is the means of major value by which one may extend the space he occupies in the minds of others, which is sometimes known as goodwill. Friendly cooperation brings the merchant's customers back as repeat purchasers of his wares, and ensures a continuance of patronage from the clients of the professional man. Hence it is a principle that belongs definitely in the philosophy of successful men, regardless of the occupation they may follow. Cooperation is attained more freely and willingly by the application of the 13th principle. M. Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is a contagious state of mind which not only aids one in gaining the cooperation of others, but more important than this, it inspires the individual to draw upon and use the power of his own imagination. It inspires action also in the expression of personal initiative, and leads to the habit of concentration of endeavor. Moreover, it is one of the qualities of major importance of a pleasing personality, and it makes easy the application of the principle of going the extra mile. In addition to all these benefits, enthusiasm gives force and conviction to the spoken word. Enthusiasm is the product of motive, but it is difficult of maintenance without the aid of the 14th principle. N. The habit of health. Sound physical health provides a suitable housing place for the operation of the mind, hence it is an essential for enduring success, assuming that the word success shall embrace all of the requirements for happiness. Here again the word habit comes into prominence, for sound health begins with a health consciousness that can be developed only by the right habits of living, sustained through self-discipline. Sound health provides the basis for enthusiasm, and enthusiasm encourages sound health, so the two are like the hen and the egg. No one can determine which came into existence first, but everyone knows that both are essential for the production of either. Health and enthusiasm are like that. Both are essential for human progress and happiness. Now take inventory again and count up the gains in power which the individual has attained by the application of these 14 principles. It has reached proportions so stupendous that it staggers the imagination. Yet it is not sufficient to ensure one against failure, therefore we shall have to add the 15th principle. Oh, budgeting time and money. Oh, what a headache one gets at the mention of saving of time and the conservation of money. Nearly everyone wishes to spend both time and money freely, but budget and conserve them, never. However, independence and freedom of body and mind, the two great desires of all mankind, cannot become enduring realities without the self-discipline of a strict budgeting system. Hence this principle is of necessity and important essential of the philosophy of individual achievement. Now we are reaching the ultimate in the attainment of personal power. We have learned the sources of power and how we may tap them and apply them at will to any desired end, and that power is so great that nothing can resist it save only the fact that the individual may unwisely apply it to his own destruction and the destruction of others. Hence, to guide one in the right use of power, it is necessary to add the 16th principle. P. The golden rule applied. Observe the emphasis on the word applied. Belief in the soundness of the golden rule is not enough to be of enduring benefit, and in order that it may serve as a safe guide in the use of personal power, it must be applied as a matter of habit, in all human relationships. Quite in order, this. But the benefits which are available through the application of this profound rule of human relationship are worthy of the efforts necessary to develop it into a habit. The penalties for failure to live by this rule are too numerous for description in detail. Now we have attained the ultimate in personal power, and we have provided ourselves with the necessary insurance against its misuse. What we need from here on out is the means by which this power may be made permanent during our entire lifetime. We shall climax this philosophy, therefore, with the only known principle by which we may attain this desired end, the 17th and last principle of this philosophy. Q. Cosmic habit force. Cosmic habit force is the principle by which all habits are fixed and made permanent in varying degrees. As stated, it is the controlling principle of this entire philosophy, into which the preceding 16 principles blend and become a part. And it is the controlling principle of all natural laws of the universe. It is the principle that gives the fixation of habit in the application of the preceding principles of this philosophy. Thus it is the controlling factor in conditioning the individual mind for the development and the expression of the prosperity consciousness, which is so essential in the attainment of personal success. Mere understanding of the 16 preceding principles will not lead anyone to the attainment of personal power. The principles must be understood and applied as a matter of strict habit, and habit is the sole work of the law of cosmic habit force. Cosmic habit force is synonymous with the great river of life to which frequent references have been made previously, for it consists of a negative and a positive potentiality, as do all forms of energy. The negative application is called hypnotic rhythm because it has a hypnotic effect on everything that it contacts. We may see its effects, in one way or another, on every human being. It is the sole means by which the poverty consciousness becomes fixed as a habit. It is the builder of all established habits of fear and envy and greed and revenge and of desire for something for nothing. It fixes the habits of hopelessness and indifference. And it is the builder of the habit of hypochondria, through which millions of people suffer all through their lives with imaginary illness. It is also the builder of the failure consciousness, which undermines the self-confidence of millions of people. In brief, it fixes all negative habits, regardless of their nature or effects. Thus it is the failure side of the great river of life. The success side of the river, the positive side, fixes all constructive habits, such as the habit of definiteness of purpose, the habit of going the extra mile, the habit of applying the golden rule in human relationships, and all the other habits which one must develop and apply in order to get the benefits of the 16 preceding principles of this philosophy. Now let us examine this word habit. Webster's dictionary gives the word many definitions. Among them, habit implies a settled disposition or tendency due to repetition. Custom suggests the fact of repetition rather than the tendency to repeat. Usage, applying only to a considerable body of people, adds the implication of long acceptation or standing. Both custom and usage often suggest authority, as we do many things mechanically from force of habit. Webster's definition runs on into considerable additional detail, but no part of it comes within sight of describing the law that fixes all habits, this omission being due no doubt to the fact that the law of cosmic habit force had not been revealed to the editors of this dictionary. But we observe one significant and important word in the Webster definition, the word repetition. It is important because it describes the means by which any habit is begun. The habit of definiteness of purpose, for example, becomes a habit only by repetition of the thought of that purpose, by bringing the thought into the mind repeatedly, by repeatedly submitting the thought to the imagination, with a burning desire for its fulfillment, until the imagination creates a practical plan for attaining this desire, by applying the habit of faith in connection with the desire, and doing it so intensely and repeatedly that one may see himself already in possession of the object of his desires, even before he begins to attain it. The building of voluntary positive habits calls for the application of self-discipline, persistence, willpower, and faith, all of which are available to the person who has assimilated the 16 preceding principles of this philosophy. Voluntary habit building is self-discipline in its highest and noblest form of application. And all voluntary positive habits are the products of willpower directed toward the attainment of definite ends. They originate with the individual, not with cosmic habit force. And they must be grounded in the mind, through repetition of thoughts and deeds until they are taken over by cosmic habit force and are given fixation, after which they operate automatically. The word habit is an important word in connection with this philosophy of individual achievement, for it represents the real cause of every man's economic, social, professional, occupational, and spiritual condition in life. We are where we are and what we are because of our fixed habits. And we may be where we wish to be and what we wish to be only by the development and the maintenance of our voluntary habits. Thus we see that this entire philosophy leads inevitably to an understanding and application of the law of cosmic habit force, the power of fixation of all habits. The major purpose of each of the 16 preceding principles of this philosophy is that of aiding the individual in the development of a particular, specialized form of habit that is necessary as a means of enabling him to take full possession of his own mind. This too must become a habit. Mind power is always actively engaged on one side of the river of life, or the other. The purpose of this philosophy is to enable one to develop and maintain habits of thought and of deed which keep his mind concentrated upon the success side of the river. This is the sole burden of the philosophy. Mastery and assimilation of the philosophy, like every other desirable thing, has a definite price which must be paid before its benefits may be enjoyed. That price, among other things, is eternal vigilance, determination, persistence, and the will to make life pay off on one's own terms instead of accepting substitutes of poverty and misery and disillusionment. There are two ways of relating one's self to life. One is that of playing horse while life rides. The other is that of becoming the rider while life plays horse. The choice as to whether one becomes the horse or the rider is the privilege of every person, but this much is certain: if one does not choose to become the rider of life, he is sure to be forced to become the horse. Life either rides or is ridden. It never stands still. The relationship of the ego and cosmic habit force. As a student of this philosophy, you are interested in the method by which one may transmute the power of thought into its physical equivalent. And you are interested in learning how to relate yourself to others in a spirit of harmony. Unfortunately, our public schools have been silent on both of these important needs. Our educational system, said Dr. Henry C. Link, has concentrated on mental development and has failed to give any understanding of the way emotional and personality habits are acquired or corrected. His indictment is not without a sound foundation. The public school system has failed in the obligation of which Dr. Link complains, because the law of cosmic habit force was but recently revealed, and even now it has not been recognized by the great mass of educators. Everyone knows that practically everything we do, from the time we begin to walk, is the result of habit. Walking and talking are habits. Our manner of eating and drinking is a habit. Our sex activities are the results of habit. Our relationships with others, whether they are positive or negative, are the results of habits, but few people understand why or how we form habits. Habits are inseparably related to the human ego. Therefore, let us turn to the analysis of this greatly misunderstood subject of the ego. But first let us recognize that the ego is the medium through which faith and all other states of mind operate. Throughout this philosophy, great emphasis has been placed upon the distinction between passive faith and active faith. The ego is the medium of expression of all action. Therefore we must know something of its nature. and possibilities in order that we may make the best use of it. We must learn how to stimulate the ego to action and how to control and guide it to the attainment of definite ends. Above all, we must disabuse our minds of the popular error of believing the ego to be only a medium for expression of vanity. The word ego is of Latin origin, and it means I. But it also connotes a driving force which may be organized and made to serve as the medium for translating desire into faith, through action. The misunderstood power of the ego. The word ego has reference to all the factors of one's personality. Therefore it is obvious that the ego is subject to development, guidance, and control through voluntary habits which we deliberately and with purpose aforethought develop. A great philosopher who devoted his entire life to the study of the human body and the mind, provided us with a practical foundation for the study of the ego when he stated, "Your body, whether living or dead, is a collection of millions of little energies that can never die. These energies are separate and individual, at times they act in some degree of harmony. The human body is a drifting mechanism of life, capable but not accustomed to control the forces within, except as habit, will, cultivation or special excitement, through the emotion, may marshal these forces to the accomplishment of some important end. We are satisfied from many experiments that this power of marshalling and using these energies can be, in every person, cultivated to a high degree. The air, sunlight, food, and water you take are agents of a force which comes from the sky and earth. You idly float upon the tide of circumstances to make up your day's life, and the opportunities of being something better then you are drift beyond your reach and pass away. Humanity is hemmed in by so many influences that, from time immemorial, no real effort has been made to gain control of the impulses that run loose in the world. It has been, and still is, easier to let things go as they will rather than exert the will to direct them. But the dividing line between success and failure is found at the stage where aimless drifting ceases, where definiteness of purpose begins. We are all creatures of emotions, passions, circumstances, and accident. What the mind will be, what the heart will be, what the body will be, are problems which are shaped to the drift of life, even when special attention is given to any of them. If you will sit down and think for a while, you will be surprised to know how much of your life has been mere drift. Look at any created life, and see its efforts to express itself. The tree sends its branches toward the sunlight, struggles through its leaves to inhale air, and even underground sends forth its roots in search of water and the minerals it needs for food. This you call inanimate life, but it represents a force that comes from some source and operates for some purpose. There is no place on the globe where energy is not found. The air is so loaded with it that in the cold north the sky shines in boreal rays, and wherever the frigid temperature yields to the warmth, the electric conditions may alarm man. Water is but a liquid union of gases, and is charged with electrical, mechanical, and chemical energies, any one of which is capable of doing great service and great damage to man. Even ice, in its coldest phase, has energy, for it is not subdued, nor even still, its force has broken mountain rocks into fragments. This energy about us we are drinking in water, eating in food and breathing in air. Not a chemical molecule is free from it, not an atom can exist without it. We are a combination of individual energies. Man consists of two forces, one tangible, in the form of his physical body, with its myriad individual cells numbering billions, each of which is endowed with intelligence and energy, and the other intangible, in the form of an ego, the organized dictator of the body which may control man's thoughts and deeds. Science teaches us the tangible portion of a man weighing 160 pounds is composed of about 17 chemical elements, all of which are known. They are 95 pounds of oxygen, 38 pounds of carbon, 15 pounds of hydrogen, 4 pounds of nitrogen, 4½ pounds of calcium, 6 ounces of chlorine, 4 ounces of sulfur, 3½ ounces of potassium, 3 ounces of sodium, 1/4 ounce of iron, 2½ ounces of fluorine, 2 ounces of magnesium, 1½ ounces of silicon, small traces of arsenic, iodine, and aluminum, These tangible parts of man are worth commercially approximately 80 cents, and may be purchased in any modern chemical plant. Add to these chemical elements a well-developed and properly organized and controlled ego, and they may be worth any price the owner sets upon them. The ego is a power which cannot be purchased at any price, but it can be developed and shaped to fit any desired pattern. The development takes place through organized habits which are made permanent by the law of cosmic habit force, which carries out the thought patterns one develops. Through controlled thought, an Edison develops and guides his ego in the field of creative investigation, and the world finds a genius whose worth cannot be estimated in dollars alone. A Henry Ford guides his ego in the field of automotive transportation and gives it such a stupendous value that it changes the trend of civilization by removing frontiers and converting mountain trails into public highways. A Marconi magnetizes his ego with a keen desire to harness the ether and lives to see his wireless communication system evolve into the discovery of radio, through which the world becomes akin, through instantaneous exchange of thought. These men, and all others who have contributed to the march of progress, have given the world a demonstration of the power of a well-developed and carefully controlled ego. One of the major differences between men who make valuable contributions to mankind and those who merely take up space in the world is mainly a difference in egos, because the ego is the driving force behind all forms of human action. Liberty and freedom of body and mind, the two major desires of all people, are available in exact proportion to the development and use one makes of the ego. Every person who has properly related himself to his own ego has both liberty and freedom in whatever proportions he desires. A man's ego determines the manner in which he relates himself to all other people. More important than this, it determines the policy under which a man relates his own body and mind, wherein is patterned every hope, aim and purpose by which he fixes his destiny in life. A man's ego is his greatest asset or his greatest liability, according to the way he relates himself to it. The ego is the sum total of one's thought habits, which have been fastened upon him through the automatic operation of the law of cosmic habit force. Every highly successful person possesses a well-developed and highly disciplined ego, but there is a third factor associated with the ego which determines its potency for good or evil, the self-control necessary to enable one to transmute its power into any desired purpose. The starting point of all individual achievements is some plan by which one's ego can be inspired with a success consciousness. The person who succeeds must do so by properly developing his own ego, impressing it with the object of his desires, and removing from it all forms of limitation, fear, and doubt which lead to the dissipation of the power of the ego. Autosuggestion, or self-hypnosis, is the medium by which one may attune his ego to any desired rate of vibration and charge it with the attainment of any desired purpose. Unless you catch the full significance of the principle of autosuggestion, you will miss the most important part of this analysis, because the power of the ego is fixed entirely by the application of self-suggestion. When this self-suggestion attains the status of faith, the ego becomes limitless in its power. The ego is kept alive and active, and it is given power by constant feeding. Like the physical body, the ego cannot and will not subsist without food. It must be fed with definiteness of purpose. It must be fed with personal initiative. It must be fed with continuous action, through well-organized plans. It must be supported with enthusiasm. It must be fed by controlled attention, directed to a definite end. It must be controlled and directed through self-discipline. And it must be supported with accurate thought. No man can become the master of anything or anyone until he becomes the master of his own ego. No man can express himself in terms of opulence while most of his thought power is given over to the maintenance of a poverty consciousness. Nevertheless, one should not lose sight of the fact that many men of great wealth began in poverty, a fact which suggests that this and all other fears can be conquered and removed from interference with the ego. In the one word, ego, may be found the composite effects of all the principles of individual achievement described in this philosophy, coordinated into one single unit of power which may be directed to any desired end by any individual who is the complete master of his ego. We are preparing you to accept the fact that the most important power which is available to you. The one power which will determine whether you succeed or fail in your life's ambition is that which is represented by your own ego. We are also preparing you to brush aside that time-worn belief which associates the ego with self-love, vanity and vulgarity, and to recognize the truth that the ego is all there is of a man outside of the 80 cents worth of chemicals, of which his physical body is composed. Sex is the great creative force of man. It is definitely associated with and is an important part of one's ego. Both sex and the ego got their bad reputations from the fact that both are subject to destructive as well as constructive application, and both have been abused by the ignorant, from the beginning of the history of mankind. The egoist who makes himself offensive through the expression of his ego is one who has not discovered how to relate himself to his ego in a manner which gives it constructive use. Constructive application of the ego is made through the expressions of one's hopes, desires, aims, ambitions and plans, and not by boastfulness or self-love. The motto of the person who has his ego under control is deeds, not words. The desire to be great, to be recognized and to have personal power, is a healthy desire, but an open expression of one's belief in his own greatness is an indication that he has not taken possession of his ego, that he has allowed it to take possession of him, and you may be sure that his proclamations of greatness are but a cloak with which to shield some fear or inferiority complex. The relationship between the ego and mental attitude. Understand the real nature of your ego and you will understand the real significance of the mastermind principle. Moreover, you will recognize that to be of the greatest service to you, the members of your mastermind alliance must be in complete sympathy with your hopes, aims and purposes. That they must not be in competition with you in any manner whatsoever. They must be willing to subordinate their own desires and personalities entirely for the attainment of your major purpose in life. They must have confidence in you and your integrity, and they must respect you. They must be willing to pander to your virtues and make allowances for your faults. They must be willing to permit you to be yourself and live your own life in your own way at all times. Lastly, they must receive from you some form of benefit which will make you as beneficial to them as they are to you. Failure to observe the last mentioned requirement will bring an end to the power of your mastermind alliance. Men relate themselves to one another in whatever capacities they may be associated because of a motive or motives. There can be no permanent human relationship based upon an indefinite or vague motive, or upon no motive at all. Failure to recognize this truth has cost many men the difference between penury and opulence. The power which takes over the ego and clothes it with the material counterparts of the thoughts which give it shape, is the law of cosmic habit force. This law does not give quality or quantity to the ego, it merely takes what it finds and translates it into its physical equivalent. The men of great achievement are, and they have always been, those who deliberately feed, shape, and control their own egos, leaving no part of the task to luck or chance, or to the varying vicissitudes of life. Every person may control the shaping of his own ego, but from that point on he has no more to do with what happens than does the farmer have anything to do with what happens to the seed he sows in the soil of the earth. The inexorable law of cosmic habit force causes every living thing to perpetuate itself after its kind, and it translates the picture which a man paints of his ego into its physical equivalent, as definitely as it develops an acorn into an oak tree, and no outside aid whatsoever is required, except time. From these statements it is obvious that we are not only advocating the deliberate development and control of the ego, but also we are definitely warning that no man can hope to succeed in any calling without such control over his ego. So that there may be no misunderstanding as to what is meant by the term, a properly developed ego, we shall describe briefly the factors which enter into its development, viz. First, one must ally himself with one or more persons who will coordinate their minds with his in a spirit of perfect harmony for the attainment of a definite purpose, and that alliance must be continuous and active. Moreover, the alliance must consist of people whose spiritual and mental qualities, education, sex, and age are suited for aiding in the attainment of the purpose of the alliance. For example, Andrew Carnegie's mastermind Alliance was made up of more than 20 men, each of whom brought to the alliance some quality of mind, experience, education, or knowledge, which was directly related to the object of the alliance and not available through any of the other members of the alliance. Second, having placed himself under the influence of the proper associates, one must adopt some definite plan by which to attain the object of the alliance and proceed to put that plan into action. The plan may be a composite plan created by the joint efforts of all the members of the master mind group. If one plan proves to be unsound or inadequate, it must be supplemented or supplanted by others, until a plan is found which will work. But there must be no change in the purpose of the alliance. Third, one must remove himself from the range of influence of every person and every circumstance which has even a slight tendency to cause him to feel inferior or incapable of attaining the object of his purpose. Positive egos do not grow in negative environments. On this point there can be no excuse for a compromise, and failure to observe it will prove fatal to the chances of success. The line must be so clearly drawn between a man and those who exercise any form of negative influence over him that he closes the door tightly against every such person, no matter what previous ties of friendship or obligation or blood relationship may have existed between them. Fourth, one must close the door tightly against every thought of any past experience or circumstance which tends to make him feel inferior or unhappy. Strong, vital egos cannot be developed by dwelling on thoughts of past unpleasant experiences. Vital egos thrive on the hopes and desires of the yet unattained objectives. Thoughts are the building blocks from which the human ego is constructed. Cosmic habit force is the cement which binds these blocks together in permanency, through fixed habits. When the job is finished, it represents, right down to the smallest detail, the nature of the thoughts which went into the building. It was Henry Ford's recognition of this truth which prompted him to remove from his business family every person who was out of step with his business policy. It was Andrew Carnegie's complete understanding of this truth which caused him to insist upon complete harmony between himself and the members of his mastermind group. Fifth, one must surround himself with every possible physical means of impressing his mind with the nature and the purpose of the ego he is developing. For example, the author should set up his workshop in a room decorated with pictures and the works of authors in his field whom he most admires. He should fill his bookshelves with books related to his own work. He should surround himself with every possible means of conveying to his ego the exact picture of himself which he expects to express, because that picture is the pattern which the law of cosmic habit force will pick up, the picture which it translates into its physical equivalent. Sixth, the properly developed ego is at all times under the control of the individual. There must be no overinflation of the ego in the direction of egomania, by which some men destroy themselves. Egomania reveals itself by a mad desire to control others by force. Striking examples of such men are Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini and William Hohenzollern, the former Kaiser of Germany. In the development of the ego, one's motto might well be, not too much, not too little, of anything. When men begin to thirst for control over others, or begin to accumulate large sums of money which they cannot or do not use constructively, they are treading upon dangerous grounds. Power of this nature grows of its own accord and soon gets out of control. Nature has provided man with a safety valve through which she deflates the ego and relieves the pressure of its influence when an individual goes beyond certain limits in the development of the ego. Emerson called it the law of compensation, but whatever it is, it operates with inexorable definiteness. Napoleon Bonaparte began to die, because of his crushed ego, on the day he landed on St. Helena Island. People who quit work and retire from all forms of activity, after having led active lives, generally atrophy and die soon thereafter. If they live, they are usually miserable and unhappy. A healthy ego is one which is always in use and under complete control. Seventh, the ego is constantly undergoing changes, for better or for worse, because of the nature of one's thought habits. The two factors which force these changes upon one are time and the law of cosmic habit force. We are here concerned with the desire to bring to your attention the Importance of time is a significant factor in the operation of cosmic habit force. Just as seed which are planted in the soil of the earth require definite periods of time for their germination, development, and growth, so do ideas, impulses of thought and desires which are planted in the mind require definite periods of time during which the law of cosmic habit force gives them life and action. There is no adequate means of describing or predetermining the exact period of time which is required for the transformation of a desire into its physical equivalent. The nature of the desire, the circumstances which are related to it, and the intensity of the desire, are all determining factors in connection with the time required for transformation from the thought stage to the physical stage. The state of mind known as faith is so favorable for the quick change of desire into its physical equivalent that it has been known to make the change almost instantaneously. Man matures physically within about 20 years, but mentally, which means the ego, he requires from 35 to 60 years for maturity. This fact explains why men seldom begin to accumulate material riches in great abundance, or to attain outstanding records of achievement in other directions, until they are about 50 years of age. The ego which can inspire a man to acquire and retain great material wealth is of necessity one which has undergone self-discipline, through which he acquires self-confidence, definiteness of purpose, personal initiative, imagination, accuracy of judgment and other qualities, without which no ego has the power to procure and hold wealth in abundance. These qualities come through the proper use of time. Observe that we did not say they come through the lapse of time. Through the operation of cosmic habit force, every individual's thought habits, whether they are negative or positive, whether of opulence or of poverty, are woven into the pattern of his ego, and there they are given permanent form which determines the nature and the extent of his spiritual and physical status. About the beginning of the 1929 economic depression, the owner of a small beauty salon turned over a back room in her place of business to an old man who needed a place to sleep. The man had no money, but he did have considerable knowledge of the methods of compounding cosmetics. The owner of the salon gave him a place to sleep and provided him with an opportunity to pay for his room by compounding the cosmetics she used in her business. Soon the two entered into a mastermind alliance which was destined to bring each of them economic independence. First, they entered into a business partnership, with the object of compounding cosmetics to be sold from house to house, the woman providing the money for the raw materials, the man doing the work. After a few years, the mastermind arrangement between the two had proved so profitable that they decided to make it permanent by marriage. Although there was a difference of more than 25 years in their ages, the man had been in the cosmetic business for the better portion of his adult life, but he had never achieved success. The young woman had barely made a living from her beauty salon. The happy combination of the two brought them into possession of a power which neither had known prior to their alliance, and they began to succeed financially. At the beginning of the Depression, they were compounding cosmetics in one small room, and selling their products personally from door to door. By the end of the Depression, some 8 years later, they were compounding their cosmetics in a large factory which they had bought and paid for, and had more than 100 employees working steadily, and more than 4,000 agents selling their products throughout the nation. During this period they accumulated a fortune of over $2 million, despite the fact that they were operating during Depression years, when such luxuries as cosmetics were naturally hard to sell. They have placed themselves beyond the need for money for the remainder of their lives. Moreover, they have gained financial freedom on precisely the same knowledge and the same opportunities they possessed prior to their mastermind alliance, when both were poverty-stricken. We wish the names of these two interesting people could be revealed, but the circumstances of their alliance and the nature of the analysis we shall now present makes this impractical. Nevertheless, we are free to describe what we conceive to be the source of their astounding achievement, viewing every circumstance of their relationship entirely from the viewpoint of an unbiased analyst who is seeking only to present a true picture of the facts. The motive which brought these two people together in a mastermind alliance was definitely economic in nature. The woman had previously been married to a man who failed to earn a living for her and who deserted her when her child was an infant. The man also had been previously married. There was not the slightest indication of the emotion of love as a motive for their marriage. The motive was entirely a mutual desire for economic freedom. The business and the elaborate home in which the couple live are entirely dominated by the old man, who sincerely believes that he is responsible for both. Their house is expensively furnished, but no one, not even invited guests, is permitted to take a turn at the piano, or to sit in one of the chairs in the living room, without special invitation from the lord and master of the household. The main dining room is equipped with ornate furniture, including a long dining table which is suitable for use on state occasions, but the family is never permitted to use it on other occasions. They dine in the breakfast room, and nothing may be served at the table at any time except food of the master's choice. A gardener is employed to attend the gardens, but no one is permitted to cut a flower without special invitation from the head of the house. Such conversations as are carried on by the family are conducted entirely by the head of the house, and no one may intervene, not even to ask a question or to offer a remark, unless he invites it. His wife never speaks unless she is definitely requested to do so, and then her speech is very brief and carefully weighed so as not to irritate her master. Their business is incorporated and the man is the president of the company. He has an elaborate office which is furnished with a large hand-carved desk and overstuffed chairs. On the wall, directly in front of his desk, is an enormous oil painting of himself at which he gazes, sometimes for an hour at a time, with obvious approval. When he speaks of the business, and particularly of the unusual success it has enjoyed during the country's worst business depression, the man takes full credit for all that has been accomplished, and he never mentions his wife's name in connection with the business. While the wife goes to business daily, she has no office and no desk. She is apt to be found strolling around among the workers, or assisting one of the girls in wrapping packages as nonchalantly as if she were an ordinary paid employee. The man's name is on every package of merchandise which leaves the factory. It is printed in large letters on every delivery truck they operate, and it appears in large type on every piece of sales literature and in every advertisement they publish. The wife's name is conspicuous by its total absence. The man believes that he built the business, that he operates it, that it could not operate without him. The truth of the matter is precisely the opposite. His ego built the business, runs it, and the business might continue to run as well or better without his presence as with it, for the very good reason that his wife developed that ego, and she could have done the same for any other man under similar circumstances. Patiently, wisely, and with purpose aforethought, this man's wife completely submerged her own personality into that of her husband, and step by step she fed his ego the type of food which removed from it every trace of his former inferiority complex, which was born of a lifetime of deprivation and failure. She hypnotized her husband into believing himself to be a great business tycoon. Whatever degree of ego this man may have possessed before it came under the influence of a clever woman, had died of starvation. She revived his ego, nurtured it, fed it and developed it into a power of stupendous proportions despite his eccentric nature and his lack of business ability. In truth, every business policy, every business move, and every forward step the business has taken was the result of the wife's ideas, which she so cleverly planted in her husband's mind that he failed to recognize their source. In reality she is the brains of the business, he the mere window dressing, but the combination is unbeatable, as evidenced by their astounding financial achievements. The manner in which this woman completely effaced herself was not only convincing evidence of her complete self-control, but it was evidence of her wisdom, for she probably knew she could not have accomplished the same results alone, or by any other methods than those she adopted. This woman has very little formal education, and we have no idea how or where she learned enough about the operation of the human mind to inspire her to merge her entire personality with that of her husband for the purpose of developing in him the ego he now has. Perhaps the natural intuition which many women possess was responsible for her successful procedure. Whatever it was, she did a thorough job, and it served the ends she sought by bringing her economic security. Here then is evidence that the major difference between poverty and riches is merely the difference between an ego that is dominated by an inferiority complex and one that is dominated by a feeling of superiority. This old man might have died a homeless pauper if a clever woman had not blended her mind with his in such a way as to feed his ego with thoughts of and belief in his ability to attain opulence. This is a conclusion from which there is no escape. Moreover, this case is only one of many that could be cited which prove that the human ego must be fed, organized, and directed to definite ends if one is to succeed in any walk of life. The Henry Ford ego, famous because of what the public at large does not know about it, is a combination of his own ego and that of his wife. The definiteness and singleness of purpose, persistence, self-reliance and self-control, so obviously important parts of the Ford ego, can be traced largely to the influence of Mrs. Ford. The Ford ego, quite unlike that of the cosmetician described, functions without glamour or ostentation of any kind. It functions in an obvious spirit of humility of the heart. There are no large pictures of Henry Ford hanging on the walls of his office, but make no mistake about this, Mr. Ford's influence is felt by every person associated directly or indirectly with his vast industrial empire, and something of Henry Ford himself goes into every automobile which leaves his factories. These are the means whereby he expresses his ego. Through mechanical perfection, through transportation service which is dependable, at a popular price, through the satisfaction he gets from giving employment, directly and indirectly, to millions of men and women. Mr. Ford is not above appreciating a word of praise, but he has never gone out of his way to attract it. His ego does not require constant pampering such as that which was given the cosmetician by his wife. Mr. Ford's method of appropriating the knowledge and experience of other men is entirely different from that of Andrew Carnegie and most other business magnates. His ego is so modest and unassuming that he neither encourages favorable comment upon his work nor goes out of his way to express any form of appreciation of the compliments which are paid him. Henry Ford has one of the truly great minds of the world. He has a great mind because he has learned to recognize the laws of nature and to adapt himself to them in a manner beneficial to himself, but many believe that his greatness is derived in a large measure from the influence of his wife and his association with other great minds, including those of Thomas A. Edison, Luther Burbank, John Burroughs, and Harvey Firestone, with whom he had a mastermind alliance for a great number of years. For many years these five men left their respective businesses and went away together to some quiet spot where they exchanged thoughts and fed their egos on the food which each needed and craved. Henry Ford's personality, his business policies, and even his physical appearance began to show a decided improvement from year to year, because of his association with these four men. Their influence upon him was definite, deep, profound, and enduring. Henry Ford has his ego completely under his control. By studying men of great achievement one may observe that the space they occupy in the world is in exact proportion to the extent to which they dominate their egos. The cosmetician occupies and controls only the space bounded by his own business and his household. It does not extend beyond these bounds. And it never can. His own mental attitude has fixed these limits and cosmic habit force has made the fixation permanent. Henry Ford occupies, in one way or another, practically all of the space of the world, and he influences in many ways the entire trend of civilization. Because he is master of his ego, Henry Ford is capable of acquiring any material thing he may set his heart upon. In fact, he has already done so. The cosmetician expresses his ego in many forms of childish, petty selfishness. Consequently, he has limited his influence to the mere accumulation of a few $1 million, and the domination, without their consent, of a few hundred people, including his own household and his employees. Henry Ford expresses his ego in ever-expanding and increasing terms of benefit to mankind and, without making a bid for it, finds himself an influencing factor throughout the world. This is an astounding thought. It provides vitally important suggestions as to the type of ego one should endeavor to develop. Henry Ford has developed an ego which extends itself into plans which belt the entire earth. He thinks in terms of the manufacture and distribution of millions of automobiles. He thinks in terms of tens of thousands of men and women working for him. He thinks in terms of millions of dollars of working capital. He thinks in terms of a business he dominates by establishing his own policies for procuring working capital by which he keeps his business out of the control of others. He thinks in terms of economy through efficient coordination of the efforts of the thousands of men and women who work for him, by setting up pay schedules and working conditions far more favorable to his employees than they could reasonably demand. He thinks in terms of harmonious cooperation between himself and his business associates, and puts his thoughts into action by removing from his organization any man who does not see eye to eye with him. These are the qualities and traits of character which nourish, feed and maintain the Ford ego. There is nothing about any of these qualities which is difficult to understand. They are qualities which any man may have by simply adopting them and using them. Turn the spotlight on the many men who began to build automobiles after Henry Ford began. Study each of the men carefully and you will learn quickly why one remembers but few of those men, or the brands of automobiles they temporarily produced. You will discover that every one of the Ford competitors who fell by the wayside did so because of self-imposed limitations or dissipation of the ego. You will also find that practically every one of these forgotten men apparently possessed as much intelligence as Henry Ford. The majority of them not only had better educations than he, but many of them had more dynamic personalities. The major difference between Henry Ford and his competitors of the past is this: he developed an ego which extended itself far beyond his personal achievements. The others so limited their egos that they soon caught up with them, and their plans went on the rocks for want of that something which an extended, flexible ego does to lead a man forward. Among the hundreds of Ford competitors who started to make automobiles soon after he began, there was one man who made such rapid progress that he probably would have eclipsed Ford's achievements in the industry if something had not gone wrong with his ego. That man's outstanding qualities were a magnetic personality, a well-rounded formal education, marvelous capacity as a salesman and sales organizer, and a record of achievement in a great industrial enterprise outside of the automotive field of such magnitude as to enable him to procure all the working capital he needed. When he was at the height of his career, he was the head of his own company, manufacturing an automobile which led the field in its price class. Even at the outset of his career, he had before him a future far more promising than that of Henry Ford. His name was then a national byword in the automotive field. His ego was dynamic, powerful, and ambitious. According to the rules by which men are usually judged, he should have outdistanced Henry Ford in a few more years of operations. But something happened to him at the very height of his career which sent him into financial oblivion and quickly erased his name from the list of automobile manufacturers. The tragedy which happened was this: success went to his head and he allowed his ego to become so greatly overinflated that it literally blew up and burst. Had he acquired humility of the heart, as did Henry Ford, he would have equaled Ford's achievements, or perhaps he would have excelled them. He had everything which was required for success except the self-discipline necessary to shape his ego and control it. Therefore his ego took possession of him and led him to ruin. The well-balanced ego is not subject to serious influence by either commendation or condemnation. The man with a well-balanced ego sets his sails in the direction of his definite major purpose, moves on his personal initiative in the direction of that purpose, and never looks to the right or to the left. He accepts both defeat and victory as the natural essentials of life. But he does not allow either to modify his plans. No one ever heard of Henry Ford spending an evening among social butterflies and cocktail glasses. No one ever read a newspaper account of Ford having boasted of his achievements. The Ford ego was not evolved from such influences, and that is why it became powerful and healthy, hale and rich, at an age when most men consider themselves ready for the scrap heap. The Ford ego is exactly as Mr. Ford desires it to be. He is in control of it at all times, therefore he occupies more space and carries more influence in the world than any other industrialist. What an astounding fact, and all the more so when one considers the lowly beginning from which Mr. Ford started, with but little education, no working capital, no extensive influence, no credit privileges, with nothing but a definite major purpose plus the qualities he acquired by the application of the 17 principles of this philosophy. These were enough. Henry Ford's power and fortune are not based upon knowledge alone. They are not based upon intelligence alone. They are not based upon education. They are in no way associated with luck, good fortune, or his having been born under the right star. The Ford power is only the expression of the self-made ego, which is absolutely free from all manner of fear, and which is not fettered by any self-imposed limitations. Henry Ford has taken possession of his own mind and has learned to direct it to the attainment of his desires. When Mr. Ford told a group of newspaper men, who accosted him on a visit to the White House, that he had come to Washington to let the president see a man who did not come to ask any favors and who did not want anything, he was neither egotistical nor facetious. He spoke a truth with stupendous connotations. Henry Ford can get any material thing he desires, or its adequate equivalent, because he has developed and controls his own ego. There is no other mystery to his great power. Henry Ford has long been a resident of Happy Valley. He attained a place in that great estate by the proper organization and usage of his own ego. He developed that ego by the application of the principles of this philosophy, through which he came into possession of the great master key to riches. And you who are learning to assimilate this philosophy may reach that estate in the same manner. You have, in the 17 principles of this philosophy, all that is required to place you in possession of the master key. You are now in possession of all the practical knowledge which has been used by successful men from the dawn of civilization to the present. This is a complete philosophy of life sufficient for every human need. It holds the secret to the solution of all human problems. And it has been presented in terms which the humblest person may understand. You may not aspire to become a Henry Ford, or a Thomas A. Edison, but you can and you should aspire to make yourself useful in order that you may occupy as much space in the world as your ego desires. Every man comes finally to resemble those who make the strongest impression upon his ego. We are all creatures of imitation, and naturally we endeavor to imitate the heroes of our choice. This is a natural and healthful trait. Fortunate indeed is the man whose hero is a person of great faith. Because hero worship carries with it something of the nature of the hero one worships. In conclusion, let us summarize what has been said on the subject of the ego by calling attention to the fact that it represents the fertile garden spot of the mind wherein one may develop all the stimuli which inspire active faith, or by neglecting to do so he may allow this fertile soil to produce a negative crop of fear and doubt and indecision which will lead to failure. The amount of space you occupy in the world is now a matter of choice. With you, the master key to riches is in your hands. You stand before the last gate which separates you from Happy Valley. The gate will not open to you without your demand that it do so. You must use the master key by making the 17 principles of this philosophy your own. You now have at your command a complete philosophy of life that is sufficient for the solution of every individual problem. It is a philosophy of principles, some combination of which has been responsible for every individual success in every occupation or calling. Although many may have used the philosophy successfully without recognizing the 17 principles by the names we have given them, no essential factor of successful achievement has been omitted. The philosophy embraces them all and describes them in words and similes that are well within the understanding of a majority of the people. It is a philosophy of concreteness that touches only rarely the abstractions, and then only when necessary. It is free from academic terms and phrases which all too often serve only to confuse the average person. The overall purpose of the philosophy is to enable one to get from where he stands to where he wishes to be, both economically and spiritually. Thus, it prepares one to enjoy the abundant life which the Creator intended all people to enjoy. And it leads to the attainment of riches in the broadest and fullest meaning of the word, including the 12 most important of all riches. The world has been greatly enriched by abstract philosophies, from the days of Plato, Socrates, Copernicus, Aristotle, and many others of the same profound caliber of thinkers, on down to the days of Ralph Waldo Emerson and William James. Now the world has the first complete, concrete philosophy of individual achievement that provides the individual with the practical means by which he may take possession of his own mind and direct it to the attainment of peace of mind, harmony in human relationships, economic security, and the fuller life known as happiness. Not as an apology, but to serve as an explanation, I shall call your attention to the fact that throughout this analysis of the 17 principles, we have emphasized the more important of these principles by continuous reference to them. The repetition was not accidental. It was deliberate and necessary because of the tendency of all mankind to be unimpressed by new ideas or new interpretations of old truths. Repetition has been necessary also because of the interrelationship of the 17 principles, being connected as they are like the links of a chain, each one extending into and becoming a part of the principle preceding it, and the principle following it. And lastly, let us recognize that repetition of ideas is one of the basic principles of effective pedagogy and the central core of all effective advertising. Therefore it is not only justified, but it is definitely necessary as a means of human progress. When you have assimilated this philosophy, you will have a better education than the majority of people who graduate from college with the Master of Arts degree. You will be in possession of all the more useful knowledge which has been organized from the experiences of the most successful men this nation has produced, and you will have it in a Chapter 11. Self-discipline. The man who acquires the ability to take full possession of his own mind may take possession of everything else to which he is justly entitled. Andrew Carnegie. We shall now reveal the methods by which one may take possession of his own mind. We begin with a quotation from a man who proved the truth of his statement by his astounding achievements. Mr. Carnegie not only acquired more material riches than he needed, but he acquired also the other 11 riches, and the more important of the 12 riches of life. And those who knew him best, who worked with him most closely, say that his most outstanding trait of character consisted in the fact that he took full possession of his own mind at an early age, and never gave up any portion of his right to think his own thoughts. What an achievement! And what a blessing it would be if every man could truthfully say, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. The Creator probably intended it to be so. If it had been intended otherwise, man would not have been limited solely to the right of control over but one power, the power of his own thoughts. We go all the way through life searching for freedom of body and mind. Yet most men never find it. Why? The Creator provided the means by which men may be free, and gave every man access to these means, and also inspired every man with impelling motives for the attainment of freedom. Why then do men go through life imprisoned in a jail of their own making, when the key to the door is so easily within their reach? The jail of poverty, the jail of ill health, the jail of fear, the jail of ignorance. The desire for freedom of body and mind is a universal desire among all peoples, but few ever attain it because most men who search for it look everywhere except the one and only source from which it may come, within their own minds. The desire for riches is also a universal desire, but most men never come within sight of the real riches of life because they do not recognize that all riches begin within their own minds. Men search all their lives for power and fame without attaining either, because they do not recognize that the real source of both is within their own minds. The mechanism of the mind is a profound system of organized power, which can be released only by one means, and that is by strict self-discipline. The mind that is properly disciplined and directed to definite ends is an irresistible power that recognizes no such reality as permanent defeat. It organizes defeat and converts it into victory, makes stepping stones of stumbling blocks, hitches its wagon to a star and uses the forces of the universe to carry it within easy grasp of its every desire. And the man who masters himself through self-discipline never can be mastered by others. Self-discipline is one of the 12 riches, but it is much more. It is an important prerequisite for the attainment of all riches, including freedom of body and mind, power and fame, and all the material things that men call wealth. It is the sole means by which one may focus the mind upon the objective of a definite major purpose until the law of cosmic habit force takes over the pattern of that purpose and begins to translate it into its material equivalent. It is the key to the volitional power of the will and the emotions of the heart, for it is the means by which these two may be mastered and balanced, one against the other, and directed to definite ends in accurate thinking. It is the directing force in the maintenance of a definite major purpose. It is the source of all persistence and the means by which one may develop the habit of carrying through his plans and purposes. It is the power with which all thought habits are patterned and sustained, until they are taken over by the law of cosmic habit force and carried out to their logical climax. It is the means by which one may take full and complete control of his mind and direct it to whatever ends he may desire. It is indispensable in all leadership, and it is the power through which one may make of his conscience a cooperator and guide instead of a conspirator. It is the policeman who clears the mind for the expression of faith, by the mastery of all fears. It clears the mind for the expression of imagination and of creative vision. It does away with indecision and doubt. It helps one to create and to sustain the prosperity consciousness that is essential for the accumulation of material riches, and the health consciousness necessary for the maintenance of sound physical health. Also, it operates entirely through the functioning system of the mind. Therefore, let us examine this system so that we may understand the factors of which it consists. The 10 factors of the mechanism of thought. The mind operates through 10 factors, some of which operate automatically, while others must be directed through voluntary effort. Self-discipline is the sole means of this direction. These 10 factors are: 1. Infinite intelligence, the source of all power of thought, which operates automatically, but it may be organized and directed to definite ends through definiteness of purpose. Infinite intelligence may be likened to a great reservoir of water that overflows continuously, its branches flowing in small streams in many directions, and giving life to all vegetation and all living things. That portion of the stream which gives life to man supplies him also with the power of thought. The brain of man may be likened to the water spigot, while the water flowing through the spigot represents infinite intelligence. The brain does not generate the power of thought, it merely receives that power from infinite intelligence and applies it to whatever ends the individual desires. And remember, this privilege of the control and the direction of thought is the only prerogative over which an individual has been given complete control. He may use it to build, or he may use it to destroy. He may give it direction, through definiteness of purpose, or he may neglect to do so, as he chooses. The exercise of this great privilege is attained solely by self-discipline. To the conscious mind, the individual mind functions through 2 departments. One is known as the conscious section of the mind, the other as the subconscious section. It is the opinion of psychologists that these 2 sections are comparable to an iceberg, the visible portion above the waterline representing the conscious section, the invisible portion below the waterline representing the subconscious section. Therefore it is obvious that the conscious section of the mind, that portion with which we consciously and voluntarily turn on the power of thought, is but a small portion of the whole, consisting of not more than 1/5 of the available mind power. The subconscious section of the mind operates automatically. It carries on all the necessary functions in connection with the building and the maintenance of the physical body, keeps the heart beating to circulate the blood, assimilates the food through a perfect system of chemistry, and delivers the food in liquid form throughout the body, removes worn out cells and replaces them with new cells, removes bacteria which are deleterious to health, creates new physical beings by the blending of the cells of protoplasm, the formative material of animal embryos, contributed by the male and female of living organisms. These and many other essential functions are performed by the subconscious section of the mind, in addition to which it serves as the connecting link between the conscious mind and infinite intelligence. It may be likened to the spigot of the conscious mind, through which, by its control through self-discipline, more thought power may be turned on. Or it may be likened to a rich garden spot wherein may be planted and germinated the seed of any desired idea. The importance of the subconscious section of the mind may be estimated by recognition of the fact that it is the only means of voluntary approach to infinite intelligence. Therefore it is the medium by which all prayers are conveyed and all answers to prayer are received. It is the medium that translates one's definite major purpose into its Material equivalent, a process which consists entirely in guidance of the individual in the proper use of the natural means of attaining the objects of his desires. The subconscious section of the mind acts upon all impulses of thought, carrying out to their logical conclusion all thoughts which are definitely shaped by the conscious mind, but it gives preference to thoughts inspired by emotional feeling, such as the emotion of fear or the emotion of faith. Hence the necessity for self-discipline as a means of providing the subconscious mind with only those thoughts or desires which lead to the attainment of whatever one wishes. The subconscious section of the mind gives preference also to the dominating thoughts of the mind, those thoughts which one creates by the repetition of ideas or desires. This fact explains the importance of adopting a definite major purpose and the necessity of fixing that purpose, through self-discipline, as a dominating thought of the mind. 3. The faculty of willpower. The power of the will is the boss of all departments of the mind. It has the power to modify, change or balance all thinking habits, and its decisions are final and irrevocable except by itself. It is the power that puts the emotions of the heart under control, and it is subject to direction only by self-discipline. In this connection it may be likened to the chairman of a board of directors whose decisions are final. It takes its orders from the conscious mind, but recognizes no other authority. 4. The faculty of reason. This is the presiding judge of the conscious section of the mind which may pass judgment on all ideas, plans, and desires, and it will do so if it is directed by self-discipline. But its decisions can be set aside by the power of the will, or modified by the power of the emotions when the will does not interfere. Let us here take note of the fact that all accurate thinking requires the cooperation of the faculty of reason, although it is a requirement which not more than one person in every 10,000 respects. This explains why there are so few accurate thinkers. Most so-called thinking is the work of the emotions without the guiding influence of self-discipline, without relationship to either the power of the will or the faculty of reason. 5. The faculty of the emotions. This is the source of most of the actions of the mind, the seat of most of the thoughts released by the conscious section of the mind. The emotions are tricky and undependable, and may be very dangerous if they are not modified by the faculty of reason, under the direction of the faculty of the will. However, the faculty of the emotions is not to be condemned because of its undependability, for it is the source of all enthusiasm, imagination and creative vision, and it may be directed by self-discipline to the development of these essentials of individual achievement. The direction may be given by modification of the emotions through the faculties of the will and the reason. Accurate thinking is not possible without complete mastery of the emotions. Mastery is attained by placing the emotions under the control of the will, thus preparing them for direction to whatever ends the will may dictate, modifying them when necessary through the faculty of reason. The accurate thinker has no opinions and makes no decisions which have not been submitted to, and passed upon by, the faculties of the will and the reason. He uses his emotions to inspire the creation of ideas through his imagination, but refines his ideas through his will and reason before their final acceptance. This is self-discipline of the highest order. The procedure is simple, but it is not easy to follow, and it is never followed except by the accurate thinker, who moves on his own personal initiative. The more important of the 12 riches, such as 1. A positive mental attitude, 2. Harmony in human relationships, 3. Freedom from fear, 4. The hope of achievement, 5. The capacity for faith, 6. An open mind on all subjects, and 7. Sound physical health, are attainable only by a strict direction and control of all the emotions. This does not mean that the emotions should be suppressed, but they must be controlled and directed to definite ends. The emotions may be likened to steam in a boiler, the power of which consists in its release and direction through the mechanism of an engine. Uncontrolled steam has no power, and though it be controlled, it must be released through a governor, which is a mechanical device corresponding to self-discipline in connection with the control and release of emotional power. The emotions which are most important and most dangerous are 1. The emotion of sex, 2. The emotion of love, and 3. The emotion of fear. These are the emotions which produce the major portion of all human activities. The emotions of love and sex are creative. When controlled and directed, they inspire one with imagination and creative vision of stupendous proportions. If they are not controlled and directed, they may lead one to indulge in destructive follies. 6. The faculty of imagination. This is the workshop wherein are shaped and fashioned all desires, ideas, plans and purposes, together with the means of attaining them. Through organized use and self-discipline, the imagination may be developed to the status of creative vision. But the faculty of the imagination, like the faculty of the emotions, is tricky and undependable if it is not controlled and directed by self-discipline. Without control, it often dissipates the power of thought in useless, impractical, and destructive activities which need not be here mentioned in detail. Uncontrolled imagination is the stuff that daydreams are made of. Control of the imagination begins with the adoption of definiteness of purpose based on definite plans. The control is completed by strict habits of self-discipline which give definite direction to the faculty of the emotions. For the power of the emotions is the power that inspires the imagination to action. 7. The faculty of the conscience. The conscience is the moral guide of the mind, and its major purpose is that of modifying the individual's aims and purposes so that they harmonize with the moral laws of nature and of mankind. The conscience is a twin brother of the faculty of reason in that it gives discrimination and guidance to the reason when reason is in doubt. The conscience functions as a cooperative guide only so long as it is respected and followed. If it is neglected, or its mandates are rejected, it finally becomes a conspirator instead of a guide, and often volunteers to justify man's most destructive habits. Thus the dual nature of the conscience makes it necessary for one to direct it through strict self-discipline. 8. The sixth sense. This is the broadcasting station of the mind, through which one automatically sends and receives the vibrations of thought, commonly known as telepathy. It is the medium through which all thought impulses known as hunches are received. And it is closely related to, or perhaps it may be a part of the subconscious section of the mind. The sixth sense is the medium through which creative vision operates. It is the medium through which all basically new ideas are revealed. And it is the major asset of the minds of all men who are recognized as geniuses. 9. The memory. This is the filing cabinet of the brain, wherein is stored all thought impulses, all experiences, and all sensations that reach the brain through the 5 physical senses. And it may be the filing cabinet of all impulses of thought which reach the mind through the sixth sense. Although all psychologists do not agree as to this, the memory is tricky and undependable unless it is organized and directed by self-discipline. 10. The 5 physical senses. These are the physical arms of the brain through which it contacts the external world and acquires information therefrom. The physical senses are not reliable, and therefore they need constant self-discipline. Under any kind of intense emotional activity, the senses become confused and unreliable. By the simplest sort of legerdemain, the 5 physical senses may be deceived. And they are deceived daily by the common experiences of life. Under the emotion of fear, the physical senses often create monstrous ghosts which have no existence except in the faculty of the imagination. And there is no fact of life which they will not and do not exaggerate or distort when fear prevails. Thus we have briefly described the 10 factors which enter into all mental activities of man. But we have supplied enough information concerning the mechanism of the mind to indicate clearly the necessity for self-discipline in their manipulation and use. Self-discipline is attained by the control of thought habits. And the term self-discipline has reference only to the power of thought, because all discipline of self must take place in the mind, although its effects may deal with the functions of the physical body. You are where you are and what you are because of your habits of thought. Your thought habits are subject to your control. They are the only circumstances of your life over which you have complete control, which is the most profound of all the facts of your life, because it clearly proves that your Creator recognized the necessity of this great prerogative privilege. Otherwise he would not have made it the sole circumstance over which man has been given exclusive control. Further evidence of the Creator's desire to give man the unchallengeable right of control over his thought habits has been clearly revealed through The law of cosmic habit force, the medium by which thought habits are fixed and made permanent, so that habits become automatic and operate without the voluntary effort of man. For the present we are interested only in calling attention to the fact that the creator of the marvelous mechanism known as a brain ingeniously provided it with a device by which all thought habits are taken over and given automatic expression. Self-discipline is the principle by which one may voluntarily shape the patterns of thought to harmonize with his aims and purposes. This privilege carries with it a heavy responsibility because it is the one privilege which determines, more than all others, the position in life which each man shall occupy. If this privilege is neglected, by one's failure to voluntarily form habits designed to lead to the attainment of definite ends, then the circumstances of life which are beyond one's control will do the job, and what an extremely poor job it often becomes. Every man is a bundle of habits. Some are of his own making while others are involuntary. They are made by his fears and doubts and worries, and anxieties and greed and superstition and envy and hatred. Self-discipline is the only means by which one's habits of thought may be controlled and directed until they are taken over and given automatic expression by the law of cosmic habit force. Ponder this thought carefully, for it is the key to your mental, physical, and spiritual destiny. You can make your thought habits to order and they will carry you to the attainment of any desired goal within your reach. Or you can allow the uncontrollable circumstances of your life to make your thought habits for you, and they will carry you irresistibly into the failure side of the great river of life. You can keep your mind trained on that which you desire from life and get just that. Or you can feed it on thoughts of that which you do not desire, and it will, as unerringly, bring you just that. Your thought habits evolve from the food that your mind dwells upon. That is as certain as that night follows day. Awake, arise, and quicken your mind to the attunement of the circumstances of life which your heart craves. Turn on the full powers of your will and take complete control of your own mind. It is your mind. It was given to you as a servant to carry out your desires, and no one may enter it or influence it in the slightest degree without your consent and cooperation. What a profound fact this is! Remember this when the circumstances over which you appear to have no control begin to move in and aggravate you. Remember it when fear and doubt and worry begin to park themselves in the spare bedroom of your mind. Remember it when the fear of poverty begins to park itself in the space of your mind that should be filled with a prosperity consciousness. And remember, too, that this is self-discipline, the one and only method by which anyone may take full possession of his own mind. You are not a worm made to crawl in the dust of the earth. If you were, you would have been equipped with the physical means by which you would have crawled on your belly instead of walking on your two legs. Your physical body was designed to enable you to stand and to walk and to think your way to the highest attainment which you are capable of conceiving. Why be contented with less? Why should you insult your Creator by indifference or neglect in the use of his most priceless gift, the power of your own mind? The potential powers of the human mind are beyond comprehension, and one of the great mysteries which has endured down through the ages consists in man's neglect to recognize and to use these powers as a means of shaping his own earthly destiny. The mind has been cleverly provided with a gateway of approach to infinite intelligence, through the subconscious section of the mind, and this gateway has been so arranged that it can be opened for voluntary use by preparation through that state of mind known as faith. The mind has been provided with a faculty of imagination wherein may be fashioned ways and means of translating hope and purpose into physical realities. It has been provided with the stimulative capacity of desire and enthusiasm with which one's plans and purposes may be given action. It has been provided with the power of the will through which both plan and purpose may be sustained indefinitely. It has been given the capacity for faith, through which the will and the reasoning faculty may be subdued while the entire machinery of the brain is turned over to the guiding force of infinite intelligence, and it has been prepared, through a sixth sense, for direct connection with other minds, under the master mind principle, from which it may add to its own power the stimulative forces of other minds which serve so effectively to stimulate the imagination. It has been given the capacity to reason, through which facts and theories may be combined into hypotheses, ideas, and plans. It has been given the power to project itself into other minds, through what is known as telepathy. It has been given the power of deduction by which it may foretell the future by analysis of the past. This capacity explains why the philosopher looks backward in order that he may see the future. It has been provided with the means of selection, modification and control of the nature of its thoughts, thereby giving to man the privilege of building his own character to order, to fit any desired pattern, and the power to determine the kind of thoughts which shall dominate his mind. It has been provided with a marvelous filing system for receiving, recording and recalling every thought it has expressed, through what is known as a memory, and this marvelous system automatically classifies and files related thoughts in such a manner that the recall of one particular thought leads to the recall of associated thoughts. It has been provided with the power of emotion through which it can stimulate at will the body for any desired action. It has been given the power to function secretly and silently, thereby ensuring privacy of thought under all circumstances. It has an unlimited capacity to receive, organize, store and express knowledge on all subjects, in both the fields of physics and metaphysics, the outer world and the inner world. It has the power to aid in the maintenance of sound physical health, and apparently it is the sole source of cure of physical ills, all other sources being merely contributory, and it maintains a perfect repair system for the upkeep of the physical body, a system that works automatically. It maintains and automatically operates a marvelous system of chemistry, through which it converts food into suitable combinations for the maintenance and repair of the body. It automatically operates the heart, through which the blood stream distributes food to every portion of the body and removes all waste materials and worn out cells of the body. It has the power of self-discipline, through which it can form any desired habit and maintain it until it is taken over by the law of cosmic habit force, and is given automatic expression. It is the common meeting ground wherein man may commune with infinite intelligence, through prayer, or any form of expressed desire or definiteness of purpose, by the simple process of opening the gateway of approach through the subconscious section of the mind, by faith. It is the sole producer of every idea, every tool, every machine, and every mechanical invention created by man for his convenience in the business of living in a material world. It is the sole source of all happiness and all misery, and of both poverty and riches of every nature whatsoever, and it devotes its energies to the expression of whichever of these that dominates the mind through the power of thought. It is the source of all human relationships, and all forms of intercourse between men, the builder of friendships and the creator of enemies, according to the manner in which it is directed. It has the power to resist and defend itself against all external circumstances and conditions, although it cannot always control them. It has no limitations within reason, no limitations except those which conflict with the laws of nature, save only those which the individual accepts through the lack of faith. Truly, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. It has the power to change from one mood to another at will. Therefore it need never be damaged beyond repair by any kind of discouragement. It can relax into temporary oblivion through sleep, and prepare itself for a fresh start within a few hours. It grows stronger and more dependable the more it is controlled, directed to definite ends and used voluntarily. It can convert sound into music that rests and soothes both the body and the soul. It can send the sound of the human voice around the earth in a fraction of a minute. It can make 2 blades of grass grow where but one grew before. It can build a printing press that receives a roll of paper at one end and turns out a completely printed and bound book at the other end, in a few moments. It can call back the sunlight at will, at any time of the day, by merely causing the pushing of a button. It can convert water into steam power and steam into electric power. The mind can control the temperature of heat at will, and it can create fire by rubbing 2 sticks together. It can produce music by drawing a hair from the tail of a horse across strings made from the internals of a cat. It can accurately locate any position on Earth by observation of the position of the stars. It can harness the law of gravitation and make it do the work of man and beast in ways too numerous for mention. It can build a machine that will generate electrical power from the air. It can build an airplane that will safely transport human beings through the air. It can build a machine that will penetrate the human body with light and photograph the bones and the soft tissues without injury. It has the power of clairvoyance through which it can discern physical objects not present or visible to the naked eye. It can clear the jungle and convert the desert into a garden spot of productivity. It can harness the waves of the oceans and convert them into power for the operation of machinery. It can produce glass that will not break and convert wood pulp into clothing. It can transform the stumbling blocks of failure into stepping stones of achievement. It can build a machine that can detect falsehoods. It can accurately measure any circle by the smallest fragment of its arc. It can produce rubber from chemicals. It can reproduce a picture of any material object, by television, without the aid of the human eye. It can determine the size, weight, and material contents of the sun, over 93 million miles away, by analysis of the sun's rays of light. It can create a mechanical eye that can detect the presence of airplanes or submarines, or any other physical object, hundreds of miles distant. It can seal hermetically any type of food and preserve it indefinitely. It can record and reproduce any sound, including the human voice, with the aid of a machine and a piece of wax. It can record and reproduce pictures of any kind of physical motion, with the aid of a piece of glass and a strip of celluloid. It can build a machine that will travel in the air, on the ground or under the water. It can build a machine that will plow its way through the thickest forest, smashing trees as if they were corn stalks. It can build a shovel that will lift as many tons of dirt in a minute as 10 men could move in a day. It can harness the magnetic poles of the northern and southern portions of the earth, with the aid of a compass, and determine direction accurately. Great and powerful is the mind of man, and it shall yet perform feats which will make all the foregoing seem as trifles by comparison. And yet, despite all this astounding power of the mind, the great majority of the people make no attempt to take control of their minds, and they suffer themselves to become cowed by fears or difficulties which do not exist save in their own imaginations. The arch enemy of mankind is fear. We fear poverty in the midst of an overabundance of riches. We fear ill health despite the ingenious system nature has provided with which the physical body is automatically maintained, repaired, and kept in working order. We fear criticism when there are no critics save only those which we set up in our own minds through the negative use of our imagination. We fear the loss of love of friends and relatives, although we know well enough that our own conduct may be sufficient to maintain love through all ordinary circumstances of human relationship. We fear old age, whereas we should accept it as a medium of greater wisdom and understanding. We fear the loss of liberty, although we know that liberty is a matter of harmonious relationships with others. We fear death when we know it is inevitable, therefore beyond our control. We fear failure, not recognizing that every failure carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. And we feared the lightning until Franklin and Edison and a few other rare individuals, who dared to take possession of their own minds, proved that lightning is a form of physical energy which can be harnessed and used for the benefit of mankind. Instead of opening our minds for the guidance of infinite intelligence through faith, we close our minds tightly with every conceivable shade and degree of self-imposed limitation based upon unnecessary fears. We know that man is the master of every other living creature on this earth, yet we fail to look about us and learn from birds of the air and beasts of the jungle that even the dumb animals have been wisely provided with food and all the necessities of their existence through the universal plan, which makes all fears groundless and foolish. We complain of lack of opportunity and cry out against those who dare to take possession of their own minds, not recognizing that every man who has a sound mind has the right and the power to provide himself with every material thing he needs or can use. We fear the discomfort of physical pain, not recognizing that pain is a universal language through which man is warned of evils and dangers that need correction. Because of our fears, we go to the Creator with prayers over petty details which we could and should settle for ourselves, then give up and lose faith. If we had any faith to begin with, when we do not get the results we ask for, not recognizing our duty to offer prayers of thanks for the bountiful blessings which we have been provided through the power of our minds. We talk and preach sermons about sin, failing to recognize that the greatest of all sins is that of the loss of faith in an all-wise Creator who has provided his children with more blessings than any earthly parent ever thinks of providing for his own children. We convert the revelations of inventions into the tools of destruction. Through what we politely call war, then cry out in protest when the law of compensation pays us off with famines and business depressions. We abuse the power of the mind in ways too numerous for mention. Because we have not recognized that this power can be harnessed through self-discipline, and used to serve our needs. Thus we go all the way through life, eating the husks and throwing away the kernels of plenty. Some of the known facts concerning the nature of thought. Before leaving the analysis of self-discipline, which deals entirely with the mechanism of thought, let us briefly describe some of the known facts and habits of thought in order that we may acquire the art of accurate thinking. 1. All thought, whether it is positive or negative, good or bad, accurate or inaccurate, tends to clothe itself in its physical equivalent, and it does so by inspiring one with ideas, plans, and the means of attaining desired ends through logical and natural means. After thought on any given subject becomes a habit and has been taken over by the law of cosmic habit force, the subconscious section of the mind proceeds to carry it out to its logical conclusion, through the aid of whatever natural media that may be available. It may not be literally true that thoughts are things, but it is true that thoughts create all things, and the things it creates are striking duplicates of the thought patterns from which they are fashioned. It is believed by some that every thought one releases starts an unending series of vibrations with which the one who releases the thought will later be compelled to contend that man himself is but a physical reflection of thought put into motion and crystallized into physical form by infinite intelligence. It is also the belief of many that the energy with which man thinks is but a projected minute portion of infinite intelligence, appropriated from the universal supply through the equipment of the brain. No thought contrary to this belief has yet been proved sound. 2. Through the application of self-discipline, thought can be influenced, controlled and directed through transmutation to a desired end, by the development of voluntary habits suitable for the attainment of any given end. 3. The power of thought, through the aid of the subconscious section of the mind, has control over every cell of the body, carries on all repairs and replacements of injured or dead cells, stimulates their growth, influences the action of all organs of the body and helps them to function by habit and orderliness, and assists in fighting disease through what is commonly called body resistance. These functions are carried on automatically, but many of them may be stimulated by voluntary aid. For all of man's achievements begin in the form of thought, organized into plans, aims and purposes and expressed in terms of physical action. All action is inspired by one or more of the 9 basic motives. 5. The entire power of the mind operates through 2 sections of the mind, the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious section is under the control of the individual. The subconscious is controlled by infinite intelligence and serves as the medium of communication between infinite intelligence and the conscious mind. The 6th sense is under the control of the subconscious section of the mind, and it functions automatically in certain fixed fundamentals, but may be influenced to function in carrying out the instructions of the conscious mind. 6. Both the conscious and the subconscious sections of the mind function in response to fixed habits, adjusting themselves to whatever thought habits the individual may establish, whether the habits are voluntary or involuntary. 7. The majority of all thoughts released by the individual are inaccurate, because they are inspired by personal opinions which are arrived at without the examination of facts, or because of bias, prejudice, fear, and the result of emotional excitement in which the faculty of the reason has been given little or no opportunity to modify them rationally. 8. The first step in accurate thinking, a step that is taken by none except those with adequate self-discipline, is that of separating facts from fiction and hearsay evidence. The second step is that of separating facts, after they have been identified as such, into 2 classes, viz., important and the unimportant. An important fact is any fact which can be used to help one attain the object of his major purpose or any minor purpose leading to his major purpose. All other facts are relatively unimportant. The average person spends his life in dealing with inferences based upon unreliable sources of information and unimportant facts. Therefore he seldom comes within sight of that form of self-discipline which demands facts and distinguishes the Difference between important and unimportant facts. 9. Desire, based on a definite motive, is the beginning of all voluntary thought action associated with individual achievement. The presence in the mind of any intense desire tends to stimulate the faculty of the imagination with the purpose of creating ways and means of attaining the object of the desire. If the desire is continuously held in the mind, through the repetition of thought, it is picked up by the subconscious section of the mind and automatically carried out to its logical conclusion. These are some of the more important of the known facts concerning the greatest of all mysteries, the mystery of human thought, and they indicate clearly that accurate thinking is attainable only by the strictest habits of self-discipline. Where, some may ask, and how may one begin the development of self-discipline? It might well begin by concentration upon a definite major purpose. Nothing great has ever been achieved without the power of concentration. How self-discipline may be applied. The accompanying chart number 1 presents a complete description of the 10 factors by which the power of thought is expressed. 6 of these factors are subject to control through self-discipline, viz. 1. The faculty of the will. 2. The faculty of the emotions. 3. The faculty of the reason. 4. The faculty of the imagination. 5. The faculty of the conscience. 6. The faculty of the memory. The remaining 4 factors act independently, and they are not subject to voluntary control, except that the 5 physical senses may be influenced and directed by the formation of voluntary habits. Chart number 1. Chart number 2. In chart number 2 we have presented a perspective picture which reveals the 6 departments of the mind over which self-discipline may be easily maintained. The departments have been numbered in the order of their relative importance, although it is impossible for anyone to say definitely which is the more important of these departments, for each is an essential factor in the expression of thought. We have been given no choice but to place ego, the seat of willpower, in the first position, because the power of the will may control all the other departments of the mind, and it has been properly called the Supreme Court of the Mind, whose decisions are final and not subject to appeal to any higher court. The faculty of the emotions takes second position, since it is well known that most people are ruled by their emotions, therefore, they rank next to the Supreme Court. The faculty of the reason takes third place in importance, since it is the modifying influence through which emotional action may be prepared for safe usage. The well-balanced mind is the mind which represents a compromise between the faculty of the emotions and the faculty of the reason. Such a compromise is usually brought about by the power of the Supreme Court, the faculty of the will. The faculty of the will sometimes decides with the emotions, at other times it throws its influence on the side of the faculty of reason, but it always has the last word, and whichever side it supports is the winning side of all controversies between the reason and the emotions. And, what an ingenious system this is! The faculty of the imagination has been given fourth place, since it is the department which creates ideas, plans and ways and means of attaining desired objectives, all of which are inspired by the faculty of the emotions, or the faculty of the will. We might say that the faculty of the imagination serves the mind as a ways and means committee, but it often acts on its own account and goes off on tours of fantastic exploration in places where it has no legitimate business in connection with the faculty of the will. On these self-inspired tours the imagination often has the full consent, cooperation, and urge of the emotions, which is the main reason why all desires which originate in the faculty of the emotions must be closely scrutinized by the faculty of the reason, and countermanded, if need be, by the faculty of the will. When the emotions and the imagination get out from under the supervision of the reason, and the control of the will, they resemble a couple of mischievous schoolboys who have decided to play hooky from school, and wind up at the old swimming hole, or in the neighbor's watermelon patch. There is no form of mischief which these two may not get into. Therefore, they require more self-discipline than all the other faculties of the mind combined. Let us remember this. The other two departments, the conscience and the memory, are necessary adjuncts of the mind, and while both are important, they belong at the end of the list, where they have been assigned. The subconscious section of the mind has been given the position above all of the other 6 departments of the mind because it is the connecting link between the conscious mind and infinite intelligence, and the medium, through which all departments of the mind receive the power of thought. The subconscious section of the mind is not subject to control, but it is subject to influence, by the means here described. It acts on its own accord, and voluntarily, although its action may be speeded up by intensifying the emotions, or applying the power of the will in a highly concentrated form. A burning desire behind a definite major purpose may stimulate the action of the subconscious section of the mind and speed up its operations. The relationship between the subconscious section of the mind and the 6 other departments of the mind, indicated on chart number 2, is similar in many respects to that of the farmer and the laws of nature through which his crops are grown. The farmer has certain fixed duties to perform, such as preparing the soil, planting the seed at the right season, and keeping the weeds out, after which his work is finished. From there on out nature takes over, germinates the seed, develops it to maturity and yields a crop. The conscious section of the mind may be compared with the farmer in that it prepares the way by the formulation of plans and purposes, under the direction of the faculty of the will. If this work is done properly, and a clear picture of that which is desired is created, the picture being the seed of the purpose desired, the subconscious takes over the picture, draws upon the power of infinite intelligence for the intelligence needed for the translation of the picture, gets the information necessary and presents it to the conscious section of the mind in the form of a practical plan of procedure. Unlike the laws of nature which germinate seed and produce a crop for the farmer within a definite, predetermined length of time, the subconscious takes over the seed of ideas or purposes submitted to it and fixes its own time for the submission of a plan for their attainment. Power of will, expressed in terms of a burning desire, is the one medium by which the action of the subconscious may be speeded up. Thus, by taking full possession of one's own mind, by exercising the power of the will, one comes into possession of power of stupendous proportions. And the act of mastering the power of the will, so that it may be directed to the attainment of any desired end, is self-discipline of the highest order. Control of the will requires persistence, faith, and definiteness of purpose. In the field of salesmanship, for example, it is a fact well known to all master salesmen, that the persistent salesman heads the list in sales production. In some fields of selling, such as that of life insurance, persistence is the asset of major importance to the salesman. And persistence, in selling, or any other calling, is a matter of strict self-discipline. In the field of advertising the same rule applies. The most successful advertisers carry on with unyielding persistence, repeating their efforts months after month, year after year, with unabating regularity, and professional advertising experts have convincing evidence that this is the only policy which will produce satisfactory results. The pioneers who settled America when this country was only a vast wilderness of primitive men and wild animals, demonstrated what can be accomplished when willpower is applied with persistence. At a later period in the history of our country, after the pioneers had established a semblance of civilized society, George Washington and his little army of underfed, half-clothed, under-equipped soldiers proved once more that willpower applied with persistence is unbeatable. And the pioneers of American industry, such men as Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, and Andrew Carnegie, gave us another demonstration of the benefits of willpower backed by persistence. These men, and all others of their type who have made great contributions to the American way of life, were men with self-discipline, and they attained it through the power of the will, backed with persistence. Andrew Carnegie's entire career provides an excellent example of the benefits which are available through self-discipline. He came to America when he was a very young boy, and began work as a laborer. He had only a few friends, none of them wealthy or influential. But he did have an enormous capacity for the expression of his willpower. By working at manual labor during the day and studying at night he learned telegraphy, and finally worked his way up to the position of private operator for the division superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. In this position he made such effective application of some of the principles of this philosophy, among them the principle of self-discipline, that he attracted the attention of men with money and influence who were in a position to aid him in carrying out the object of his major purpose in life. At this point in his career he had precisely the same advantages that hundreds of other telegraph operators enjoyed, but no more. But he did have one asset which the other operators apparently did not possess, the will to win and a definite idea of what he wanted, together with the persistence to carry on until he got it. This too was the outgrowth of self-discipline. Mr. Carnegie's outstanding qualities were willpower and persistence, plus a strict self-discipline through which these traits were controlled and directed to the attainment of a definite purpose. Beyond these he had no outstanding qualities which are not possessed by the man of average intelligence. By exercising his willpower he adopted a definite major purpose and clung to that purpose until it made him America's greatest industrial leader. Not to mention the huge personal fortune which he accumulated out of his willpower, properly self-disciplined, and directed to the attainment of a definite purpose, came the great United States Steel Corporation, which revolutionized the steel industry and provided employment for a huge army of skilled and unskilled workers. Thus we see that a successful man gets his start through the application of self-discipline, in pursuit of a definite purpose, and he carries on until he attains that purpose, with the aid of that same principle. Self-discipline is a self-acquired trait of character. It is not one which can be appropriated from the lives of others, nor acquired from the pages of a book. It is an asset which must come from within, by exercise of one's power of will. These self-acquired qualities are just as effective in other forms of application as they are in the attainment of leadership in industry, as we shall observe by considering the achievements of Miss Helen Keller. With the aid of her willpower and persistence she bridged her afflictions so effectively that she learned to speak, and by her sense of touch she learned to connect her mind with much more of the outside world than the average person with two good eyes ever sees. With that same power of will she acquired peace of mind far beyond the average, acquired the hope necessary to sustain her in a life of total darkness, and educated herself sufficiently to enable her to perceive the nature of the world around her as well or better than the average person, who has all his physical faculties. When we consider the achievements of this remarkable woman we are forced to the conclusion that the power of the will is an irresistible force, capable of enabling one to surmount all the ordinary difficulties of life. It seems hardly necessary to emphasize the fact that Miss Keller accomplished her astounding feat by the strictest sort of self-discipline, for that is obvious. It may be helpful to some, however, if we call attention to the fact that Miss Keller's entire life has been devoted to some form of service designed to help others. She not only believes in the soundness of the principle of going the extra mile, but she lives it every minute of her busy life. When Andrew Carnegie said that the power of will is an irresistible force which recognizes no such reality as failure, he doubtlessly meant that it is irresistible when it is properly organized and directed to a definite end, in a spirit of faith. Obviously he intended to emphasize three important principles of this philosophy as the basis of all self-acquired self-discipline, viz. A definiteness of purpose, b. applied faith, c. self-discipline. It should be remembered, however, that the state of mind which can be developed through these three principles can best be attained, and more quickly, by the application of other principles of this philosophy, among them a. the master mind, b. a pleasing personality, c. the habit of going the extra mile, d. personal initiative, e. creative vision. Combine these five principles with definiteness of purpose, applied faith and self-discipline, and you will have an available source of personal power of stupendous proportions. The beginner in the study of this philosophy may find it difficult to gain control over his power of will without approaching that control step by step, through the mastery and application of these 8 principles. Mastery can be attained in one way only, and that is by constant, persistent application of the principles. They must be woven into one's daily habits and applied in all human relationships, and in the solution of all personal problems. The power of the will responds only to motive persistently pursued, and it becomes strong in the same way that one's arm may become strong by systematic use. Men with willpower which has been self-acquired, through self-discipline, do not give up hope or quit when the going becomes hard. Men without willpower do. A humble general stood in review before an army of tired, discouraged soldiers who had just been badly defeated during the war between the states. He too had a reason to be discouraged, for the war was going against him. When one of his officers suggested that the outlook seemed discouraging, General Grant lifted his weary head, closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and exclaimed, "We will fight it out along these lines if it takes all summer." And he did fight it out along the lines he had chosen. Thus it may well be that on this firm decision of one man, backed by an indomitable will, came the final victory which preserved the union of the states. One school of thought says that right makes might. Another school of thought says that might makes right. But men who think accurately know that the power of the will makes might, whether right or wrong, and the entire history of mankind backs up this belief. Study men of great achievement, wherever you find them, and you will find evidence that the power of the will, organized and persistently applied, is the dominating factor in their success. Also, you will find that successful men commit themselves to a stricter system of self-discipline than any which is forced upon them by circumstances beyond their control. They work when others sleep. They go the extra mile, and if need be another and still another mile, never stopping until they have contributed the utmost service of which they are capable. Follow in their footsteps for a single day and you will be convinced that they need no taskmaster to drive them on. They move on their own personal initiative because they direct their efforts by the strictest sort of self-discipline. They may appreciate commendation, but they do not require it to inspire them to action. They listen to condemnation, but they do not fear it, and they are not discouraged by it. And they sometimes fail, or suffer temporary defeat, just as others do, but failure only spurs them on to greater effort. They encounter obstacles, as does everyone, but these they convert into benefits through which they carry on toward their chosen goal. They experience discouragements, the same as others do, but they close the doors of their minds tightly behind unpleasant experiences and transmute their disappointments into renewed energy with which they struggle ahead to victory. When death strikes in their families they bury their dead, but not their indomitable wills. They seek the counsel of others, extract from it that which they can use, and reject the remainder, although the whole world may criticize them on account of their judgment. They know they cannot control all the circumstances which affect their lives, but they do control their own state of mind and their mental reactions to all circumstances, by keeping their minds positive at all times. They are tested by their own negative emotions, as are all people, but they keep the upper hand over these emotions by making right royal servants of them. Let us keep in mind the fact that through self-discipline one may do two important things, both of which are essential for outstanding achievement. First, one may completely control the negative emotions by transmuting them into constructive effort, using them as an inspiration to greater endeavor. Secondly, one may stimulate the positive emotions, and direct them to the attainment of any desired end. Thus, by controlling both the positive and the negative emotions the faculty of reason is left free to function, as is also the faculty of the imagination. Control over the emotions is attained gradually, by the development of habits of thought which are conducive of control. Such habits should be formed in connection with the small, unimportant circumstances of life, for it is true, as Supreme Court Justice Brandeis once said, that the brain is like the hand. It grows with use. One by one the 6 departments of the mind which are subject to self-discipline can be brought under complete control, but the start should be made by habits which give one control over the emotions first, since it is true that most people are the victims of their uncontrolled emotions throughout their lives. Most people are the servants, not the masters of their emotions, because they have never established definite, systematic habits of control over them. Every person who has made up his mind to control the 6 departments of his mind, through a strict system of self-discipline, should adopt and follow a definite plan to keep this purpose before him. One student of this philosophy wrote a creed for this purpose, which he followed so closely that it soon enabled him to become thoroughly self-discipline conscious. It worked so successfully that it is here presented for the benefit of other students of the philosophy. The creed was signed, and repeated orally, twice daily, once upon arising in the morning and once upon retiring at night. This procedure gave the student the benefit of the principle of autosuggestion, through which the purpose of the creed was conveyed clearly to the subconscious section of his mind, where it was picked up and acted upon automatically. The creed follows. A creed for self-discipline. Willpower. Recognizing that the power of will is the supreme court over all other departments of my mind, I will exercise it daily, when I need the urge to action for any purpose, and I will form habits designed to bring the power of my will into action at least once daily. Emotions. Realizing that my emotions are both positive and negative, I will form daily habits which will encourage the development of the positive emotions, and aid me in converting the negative emotions into some form of useful action. Reason. Recognizing that both my positive emotions and my negative emotions may be dangerous if they are not controlled and guided to desirable ends, I will submit all my desires, aims and purposes to my faculty of reason, and I will be guided by it in giving expression to these. Imagination. Recognizing the need for sound plans and ideas for the attainment of my desires, I will develop my imagination by calling upon it daily for help in the formation of my plans. Conscience. Recognizing that my emotions often err in their over-enthusiasm, and my faculty of reason often is without the warmth of feeling that is necessary to enable me to combine justice with mercy in my judgments, I will encourage my conscience to guide me as to what is right and what is wrong. But I will never set aside the verdicts it renders, no matter what may be the cost of carrying them out. Memory. Recognizing the value of an alert memory, I will encourage mind to become alert by taking care to impress it clearly with all thoughts I wish to recall, and by associating those thoughts with related subjects which I may call to mind frequently. Subconscious mind. Recognizing the influence of my subconscious mind over my power of will, I shall take care to submit to it a clear and definite picture of my major purpose in life and all minor purposes leading to my major purpose, and I shall keep this picture constantly before my subconscious mind by repeating it daily. Signed. Discipline over the mind is gained, little, by the formation of habits which one may control. Habits begin in the mind, therefore, a daily repetition of this creed will make one habit conscious in connection with the particular kind of habits which are needed to develop and control the 6 departments of the mind. The mere act of repeating the names of these departments has an important effect. It makes one conscious that these departments exist, that they are important, that they can be controlled by the formation of thought habits, that the nature of these habits determines one's success or failure in the matter of self-discipline. It is a great day in any person's life when he recognizes the fact that his success or failure throughout life is largely a matter of control over his emotions. Before one can recognize this truth, he must recognize the existence and the nature of his emotions, and the power which is available to those who control them, a form of recognition which many people never indulge in during their entire lifetime. There is an alliance of men known as Alcoholics Anonymous, with a membership that spreads throughout the nation. These men operate in local mastermind groups in almost every city of the nation, and they are releasing one another from the evils of alcoholism on a scale which is nothing short of miraculous. They operate entirely through self-discipline. The medicine they use is the most powerful known to mankind. It consists of the power of the human mind directed to a definite end, that end being the end of alcoholism. Here is an achievement which should inspire all men to become better acquainted with the power of their own minds. If the mind can cure alcoholism, and it is doing so, it can cure poverty, and ill health, and fear, and self-imposed limitations. Alcoholics Anonymous is getting results because its members have been introduced to their other selves, those unseen entities which consist in the power of thought, the forces within the human mind which recognize no such reality as the impossible. This organization will live and it will grow, as all the forces of good must. The organization will eventually extend its service to include not only the elimination of the evils of alcoholism, but all other evils, such as the evils of fear, and poverty, and ill health, and hatred, and selfishness. Eventually Alcoholics Anonymous will no doubt adopt the 17 principles of this philosophy and provide its benefits for every member of that organization, as some of its members have already done with astounding effects. It is a well-known fact that an enemy which has been recognized is an enemy that is half defeated. And this applies to enemies which operate within one's own mind as well as to those which operate outside of it, and especially does it apply to the enemies of negative emotions. Once these enemies have been recognized, one begins, almost unconsciously, to set up habits, through self-discipline, with which to counteract them. This same reasoning applies also to the benefits of positive emotions, for it is true that a benefit recognized is a benefit easily utilized. The positive emotions are beneficial, for they are a part of the driving force of the mind, but they are helpful only when they are organized and directed to the attainment of definite, constructive ends. If they are not so controlled, they may be as dangerous as any of the negative emotions. The medium of control is self-discipline, systematically and voluntarily applied through the habits of thought. Take the emotion of faith, for example. This emotion, the most powerful of all the emotions, may be helpful only when it is expressed through constructive, organized action based upon definiteness of purpose. Faith without action is useless, because it may resolve itself into mere daydreaming, wishing and faint hopefulness. Self-discipline is the medium through which one may stimulate the emotion of faith, through definiteness of purpose persistently applied. The discipline should begin by establishing habits which stimulate the use of the power of the will, for it is the ego the seat of the power of the will in which one's desires originate. Thus, the emotions of desire and faith are definitely related. Wherever a burning desire exists, there exists also the capacity for faith, which corresponds precisely with the intensity of the desire. The two are associated always. Stimulate one and you stimulate the other. Control and direct one, through organized habits, and you control and direct the other. This is self-discipline of the highest order. Benjamin Disraeli, believed by some to have been the greatest Prime Minister England ever had, attained that high station through the sheer power of his will, directed by definiteness of purpose. He began his career as an author, but he was not highly successful in that field. He published a dozen or more books, but none of them made any great impression on the public. Failing in this field, he accepted his defeat as a challenge to greater effort in some other field, nothing more. Then he entered politics, with his mind definitely set upon becoming the Prime Minister of the far-flung British Empire. In 1837 he became a Member of Parliament from Maidstone, but his first speech in Parliament was universally regarded as a flat failure. Again he accepted his defeat as a challenge to try once more. Fighting on, with never a thought of quitting, he became the leader of the House of Commons by 1858, and later became the Chancellor of the Exchequer. In 1868 he realized his definite major purpose by becoming the Prime Minister. Here he met with terrific opposition, his testing time was at hand, which resulted in his resignation, but far from accepting his temporary defeat as failure, he staged a comeback and was elected Prime Minister a second time, after which he became a great builder of empires, and extended his influence in many different directions. His greatest achievement perhaps was the building of the Suez Canal, a feat which was destined to give the British Empire unprecedented economic advantages. The keynote of his entire career was self-discipline. In summarizing his achievements in one short sentence he said, "The secret of success is constancy of purpose." When the going was the hardest, Disraeli turned on his willpower to its greatest capacity. It sustained him through the emergencies of temporary defeat, and brought him through to victory. Here is the greatest of all the danger points of the majority of men. They give up and quit when the going becomes tough, and often they quit when one more step would have carried them triumphantly to victory. Willpower is needed most when the oppositions of life are the greatest. And self-discipline will provide it for every such emergency, whether it be great or small. The late ex-president, Theodore Roosevelt, was another example of what can happen when a man is motivated by the will to win despite great handicaps. During his early youth he was seriously handicapped by chronic asthma and weak eyes. His friends despaired of his ever regaining his health, but he did not share their views, thanks to his recognition of the power of self-discipline. He went west, joined a group of hard-hitting outdoor workers, and placed himself under a definite system of self-discipline, through which he built a strong body and a resolute mind. Some doctors said he could not do it, but he refused to accept their verdict. In his battle to regain his health, he acquired such perfect discipline over himself that he went back east, entered politics, and kept on driving until his will to win made him President of the United States. Those who knew him best have said that his outstanding quality was a will which refused to accept defeat as anything more than an urge to greater effort. Beyond this, his ability, his education, his experience were in no way superior to similar qualities possessed by men all around him of whom the public heard little or nothing. While he was president, some army officials complained of an order he gave them to keep physically fit. To show that he knew what he was talking about, he rode horseback 100 miles, over rough Virginia roads, with the army officials trailing after him, trying hard to keep pace. Behind all this physical action was an active mind which was determined not to be handicapped by physical weakness, and that mental activity reflected itself throughout his administration in the White House. When the mind says go forward, the physical body responds to its command, thus proving the truth of Andrew Carnegie's statement that our only limitations are those which we set up in our own minds. A French expedition had tried to build the Panama Canal, but failed. Theodore Roosevelt said, "The canal shall be built," and he went to work then and there to express his faith in terms of action. The canal was built. Personal power is wrapped up in the will to win. But it can be released for action only by self-discipline, and by no other means. Robert Louis Stevenson was a delicate youth from the day of his birth. His health prevented him from doing any steady work at his studies until he was past 17. At 23 his health became so bad that his physicians sent him to the South. There he met the woman of his choice and fell in love. His love for her was so great that it gave him a new lease on life, a new motive for action, and he began to write, although his physical body was scarcely strong enough to carry him around. He kept on writing until he had greatly enriched the world by his writings, now universally accepted as masterpieces. The same motive, love, has given the wings of thought to many another, who, like Robert Louis Stevenson, has made this a richer and a better world. Without the motive of love, Stevenson doubtlessly would have died without having made his contributions to mankind. He transmuted his love for the woman of his choice into literary works, through habits of self-discipline which placed the 6 departments of his mind under his control. In a similar manner, Charles Dickens converted a love tragedy into literary works which have enriched the world. Instead of going down under the blow of his disappointment in his first love affair, he drowned his sorrow through the intensity of his action in writing. In that manner he closed the door behind an experience which many another might have used as a door of escape from his duty and alibi for his failure. Through self-discipline he converted his greatest sorrow into his greatest asset, for it revealed to him the presence of that other self wherein consisted the power of genius which he reflected in his literary works. There is one unbeatable rule for the mastery of sorrows and disappointments, and that is transmutation of those emotional frustrations through definitely planned work. It is a rule which has no equal, and the secret of its power is self-discipline. Freedom of body and mind, independence, and economic security are the results of personal initiative expressed through self-discipline. By no other means may these universal desires be assured. We near the end of our journey. Our journey on the road to Happy Valley is about ended. You must travel the remainder of the distance alone. If you have followed the instructions I have given you, in the right kind of mental attitude, you are now in possession of the great master key which will unlock the gate to Happy Valley. Now I shall reveal to you a great truth of the utmost importance. The master key to riches consists entirely in the greatest power known to man, the power of thought. You may take full possession of the master key by taking possession of your own mind, through the strictest of self-discipline. Through self-discipline you may think yourself into or out of any circumstance of life. Self-discipline will help you to control your mental attitude. Your mental attitude may help you to master every circumstance of your life, and to convert every adversity, every defeat, every failure into an asset of equivalent scope. That is why a positive mental attitude heads the entire list of the 12 riches of life. Therefore, it should be obvious to you that the great master key to riches is nothing more nor less than the self-discipline necessary to help you take full and complete possession of your own mind. Start right where you stand, and become the master of yourself. Start now. Be done forever with that old self which has kept you in misery and want. Recognize and embrace that other self which can give you everything your heart craves, including entrance into the great estate of Happy Valley. We have come to the end of our journey. In departing, may I wish you a happy and pleasant voyage into the new life you shall enjoy in Happy Valley. The lights were dimmed. The masked rich man from Happy Valley disappeared into the darkness as mysteriously as he had come, but he had given every member of that huge audience a new birth of hope and faith and courage. And we sincerely hope that the reading of his story has helped you to share these blessings. We hope that from this moment forward you will be always in full possession of your own mental attitude, that you may attune it to whatever station in life you demand of yourself. Remember, it is profoundly significant that the only thing over which you have complete control is your own mental attitude.